This episode of the Cult Pop Show podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch or get 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, then please consider becoming a patron and joining us at www.patreon.com/cultpopshow. So this morning I was at work. I was scooting to work at like 4 a.m. kind of thing. And I felt a little something and I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And then I got to work, and I like to put my feet up when I get to work, and I did, and I was chatting to one of my mates, and then I felt this massive rip in my pants, and you know how your crotch, when your pants wear out, the crotch gets real thin.
Yeah.
It was from there, but across my right butt cheek, and so I was I couldn't walk around. So I just had to sit in my chair for 4 hours until Jess woke up and brought me pants on her way to work.
Well, you guys are so lucky to have each other. If that happened to me, I'd have to message you, and you'd be like,
"Can you please what was the word fast track? Courier me some pants.
I need some pants stat."
Wow.
That was a close one, dude. People might have seen your butt.
I know. And I had a jersey that I wrapped around my waist like a lame grunge person.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Kurt Cobain died to this day 25 years ago.
And
the day we're recording this, which is a week and a half before
it's a wee while back. It's also Paul Rudd's 50th birthday. But we'll be talking more about Paul Rudd later on, because this is Film Franchise Fortnights on the Cult Pop Show podcast, and today it's part 2. We made it, baby. We're here. We're clear with what we're doing.
Our intentions are clear.
Yes, this is the MCU Phase 2, and that rhymes.
I'm AJ.
And I'm Richard, the guy who ripped his pants.
Just a fool who went and
ripped his pants. That's actually such a good song.
Yeah, man. Of course.
The music in SpongeBob is very good.
Okay, yep. There's a mental pathway whenever we start Film Franchise Fortnights episode in my mind where it's okay, how do we get from playful banter to talking about the franchise? And sometimes it's easy, and then sometimes we briefly mention SpongeBob, and then you mentioned a second SpongeBob thing.
I go further down the SpongeBob rabbit hole.
The deeper the rabbit hole gets, the harder it is to climb back out into a perfect segue into the MCU, which you'd already brought up. So
yeah, and then we went back to SpongeBob, but I'd like to just stay on SpongeBob for a moment.
Sure, of course.
The Krusty Krab pizza medley is so good. I get that in my head all the time.
Yeah, I like the part where he's the Krusty Krab pizza.
Yeah, that's the bit.
That's the bit.
Here's the pizza for you and me. It's a good scene. And
imagine if we did what we're doing now, but for the subject of this episode. That'd be good content, bro. That'd be such a good podcast.
But you know what? We're just so stretched for content in this episode that I'm having to relive old SpongeBob episodes.
Yeah.
The Lost episode, which also has some good music in it.
I'm convinced SpongeBob appears in a Marvel movie, but I can't remember what one. On the TV.
He's in War of the Worlds, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
They're watching on TV. However, Tony does call Ebony Maw Squidward in Infinity War, which is the payoff to phase the whole thing, and we're talking about phase 2.
Okay.
Nailed
I love
it.
that Tony Stark knows who Squidward is.
Yeah.
What other SpongeBob characters do you think? I'm kidding. All right, no. Okay. The Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 2. What films? So last week we did Phase 1, which was Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America: the first Avenger, shut up, and the Avengers.
Get off
they
the
all
podcast.
teamed up.
Yes, so then Phase 2 begins on Earth with Iron Man 3, and then we journey to Asgard and Thor the Dark World, and then we're back on Earth with Captain America the Winter Soldier, then we jettison out to space for Guardians of the Galaxy, and then back on Earth for Avengers Age of Ultron and Ant-Man? I can't wait to talk about that one. He sounds like fun.
Does the MCU count as one of our famed franchises where there's a sequel set in space?
Maybe.
Although I guess Thor would be the first one for that to count.
Yeah. Although, like, Avengers does have a sequel, like the first two are pretty grounded, and then the third one, although the first one he goes to space.
Imagine if they called Avengers Infinity War Avengers in Space.
Well, we're not here to talk about Avengers Infinity War. We're here to talk about
Not yet.
Iron Man 3 for now, and then we'll talk about the other films. So, this was directed by Shane Black, came out in 2013, and AJ, what did you think of this one, mate?
What did I think of it?
No, what did you think it got, and what's it about? Sorry, I jumped the gun. The James gun, as it were.
Stop. Iron Man 3, it would have, it'd be around the same rating as like Iron Man 2, maybe. I don't think it's particularly up there in the Marvel annals of. I mean, they're all up there, but I'm gonna say like it doesn't crack 80. It'll be like high 70s.
Right, so you reckon it doesn't crack 80?
Yeah,
it's 80.
Fuck.
So it's the 15th highest if you're going by Rotten Tomatoes ranking. And what's it about, my friend?
Well, I've written down some synopses, and Iron Man 3 is the most complex of Phase 2's synopses. I don't know if it's the most complex film, but it was the hardest one to like convey all the pertinent information in a succinct way. So here's what I've written. After the events of the Avengers, Tony Stark now suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder
Poor guy.
during a national terrorism campaign on the United States led by the mysterious Mandarin. The Mandarin is also in cahoots with an old jilted fan of Stark's named Aldrich Killian. Is it Aldrich?
I don't know. I think they say it both ways in the film.
Wow.
Let's say Aldrich.
Okay.
Aldrich.
Who has been developing an experimental regenerative treatment called Extremis that allows recovery from crippling injuries, but will also explode the user if not handled properly. So that's like a spoiler-free.
High stakes.
Yeah. It's a spoiler-free kind of synopsis of the film.
Okie dokie. So, this is probably the film I'm least excited to talk about.
Okay.
Because every time we talk about it, you're like, because I don't, there is a big, issue with the film that a lot of people would point to. You love it. I'm kind of ambivalent on it. And, yeah, I don't like it. It's this weird thing of like where you're fully one way and I'm in the middle, but we don't have someone fully in the other direction, you know?
Yeah. All right. So, what's the best way to kind of broach this subject? So, well, first
we're
of all,
talking about the Mandarin twist. I mean, if you're listening to this and you don't know what we're talking about, then it's weird for you to be listening to this podcast.
Yeah, get out. Leave me alone.
But yeah, so if you don't know, and spoilers for Iron Man 3, about 2/3 of the way through the film, or maybe closer to halfway, it is revealed that the Mandarin, played by Ben Kingsley, is actually just a front for he's an actor called Trevor Slattery.
He's real bumbling. He's like,
yeah.
It's a dramatic contrast to the character he's playing. Which props to Trevor Slattery. He's a good actor.
Props to Ben Kingsley for playing Trevor Slattery. I mean, they say Trevor Slattery's lair is the toast of Croydon, wherever that is. That's such a good line, man. But yeah, so Aldrich Killian is actually the Mandarin.
Which is a line inserted in there to like appease those who were mad that the Mandarin was a fake out, because as I am to understand, the Mandarin is Iron Man's Joker from the comics. So I think that the reason people hated this was because the Mandarin is Iron Man's classic arch nemesis, and they wanted to see him done, to justice. They wanted to see a proper Mandarin be in a proper Iron Man movie. Now, I've never read an Iron Man comic or graphic. I've read the Civil War graphic novel. That's about as close as I've actually read to a Iron Man comic.
Yeah.
And look, first of all, the Mandarin wasn't in the first two movies, and I remember the first two Iron Man movies, and I remember reading about it beforehand, and people were saying it's because he's like quite an antiquated, representation for communism fears.
Yeah, he plays on the fears of like the Vietnam War and shit like that.
Yeah, things like that. So he doesn't quite work in a modern audience. So there's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is I don't really give a shit if it's like this is Iron Man 3, which is a movie set within one specific interpretation of the Iron Man story, and I love that twist. People will hate me for this. People have sworn at me online before because I go out to bat for this twist. I thought it was hilarious and awesome, and like it was a great way to subvert expectations. And people always talk about how, especially in phase 2's where this conversation begun, people are always talking about how the Marvel movies don't take risks anymore. They're all the same thing. Iron Man 3 is Marvel's riskiest movie because of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I like, because in a group chat the other day, you referred to it as like the Last Jedi of Marvel.
I think Rowan referred to it as that, and I was like, yeah, man. But then you brought it up again later, and I was like, I don't have much else to say other than both films have a similar subversion of expectations.
Yeah.
That's about as far as the metaphor extends.
I don't know, and I'm pretty ambivalent on both of them. They're like both these two like completely polarizing movies that I'm just like, you know what, like take it or leave it. I think it could be revealed to be like The Last Jedi if Episode 9 of Star Wars doesn't follow through with a lot of the changes, because that's what happened in Iron Man 3. It's risky, they made all these changes, but they didn't affect anything after it. Like,
which isn't Iron Man 3's fault.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that more when we talk about Age of Ultron, but it is very much like, because I remember at the end of Iron Man 3, I was like, how the fuck is Tony going to be in the MCU anymore? And then it's just like, he just is, nothing changed. You can take Iron Man 3 out of canon and nothing changes.
Yeah, and we will talk about that a bit more in Age of Ultron, because the talking points in my head for that feel like they should be with that film instead of this film.
Yeah. So look forward to that in 3 hours. But the thing about the twist, I'm like you, I don't follow Iron Man comics or anything like that. I was aware of the Mandarin beforehand, just in my Googling of Iron Man, but I think, because another thing that became really clear in Marvel and the MCU Phase 2 is Marvel's quote-unquote villain problem, that all their villains are really boring. So they cast an Oscar-winning actor like Ben Kingsley, who delivers this incredible performance for 2/3 of the film. Not saying his performance as Trevor isn't great as well, because it is, but in a different way. And then they're just like, oh, it's CGI Guy Pearce actually is the villain, and he's gonna die in 10 minutes of him being introduced.
Yeah.
I think the film did take a lot of risks, but at the same time, it's similar to Iron Man 2. Like, Iron Man 2, we said there's a lot of good stuff in there, but it's so messy. Whereas I think Iron Man 3 has a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff, and it's so messy that it kind of just ends up being like, take it or leave it for me.
Right.
And also, interestingly as well, on a personal note, is that you and I both went to the midnight premiere of this separately. We weren't together at the time. But I remember the next day, and we're broadcasting at film school together, and I knocked on your edit booth, or you like stopped me in the hallway, and you were like, what'd you think? And I was like, yeah, it was cool. And you're like, yeah, man. And that was like the first time we dissected a Marvel film together. And look at us now.
Wow. I don't think I went to the midnight premiere, dude. I'm pretty sure I didn't go to the midnight premiere, but...
Okay. Well, I mean, like, you did, so...
No,
or
I
like
remember
whatever the
'cause
earliest possible screening was. If it was like
people had seen it before me, I think. Anyway, that's not
I
important.
nah, because I remember you and I were the only two people in broadcasting school that had seen it.
Was it Iron Man 3, was it?
Yeah, 100%.
You sure it wasn't like The Dark Knight Rises?
Nah, I am 100%
I
confident
believe
on
you.
this because you were in second year, I was in first year. With the only year we overlapped was 2013.
True.
And yeah, no, I'm 100% confident
I
that it was
believe
Iron
you.
Man 3.
I trust you. Yeah, I really, really, really like Iron Man 3. And I like that I like it. You know, I like what it tells people about my taste in film, that I like this kind of experimental, risky, especially within a blockbuster context. I don't, I don't necessarily like risky films that aren't in blockbuster context. Like if I see like a real experimental art house piece, I'm like, whatever. But if I like see something like The Last Jedi, where it like intentionally goes out of its way to like give you red herrings and not do what you're expecting it to do, I like sit up in my seat and I'm like, okay. So I guess that's part of why I like this. But it doesn't just come down to the Mandarin twist for why I love this film.
Yeah, sure.
I talked about on the Phase 1 episode how I really enjoy Tony Stark's character because I really like seeing someone who doesn't take life seriously have to take life seriously, you know, and or like have to act properly to save the world. I think that's a really intriguing, almost fish out of water kind of state to put your character in. And I also talked about how I love that Tony goes to space, and then as he falls out of space, he's changed forever in quotation marks. And
because he's
forever,
not real, you know.
Yeah. And that forever extends into Iron Man 3 and no further. So I really love the PTSD stuff. I love that he has panic attacks because we're seeing a character who's so cocky, and I think I attribute a lot of this to Robert Downey Jr.'s acting, because he plays a character that I don't know if it'd be particularly hard for Robert Downey Jr. to tap into, right? But then to be playing a character who would hate for people to see him in this, you know, when like Harley, the kid he shacks up with, like is that a bad term to use?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the term.
he hangs out with a kid for a bit of it, and the kid sees him having a panic attack, and or like when he's having a bad dream, and then one of the Iron Man suits nearly attacks Pepper, and he like wakes up and he's like, just let me catch my breath. And it's like, I really like seeing Tony Stark be vulnerable. It's real interesting because it's like this facade has dropped. You know, he's not being the cocky smartass that he is for most of the film, and I just think that makes him a really layered and interesting character. The thing I dislike the most about Iron Man 3 is actually probably the just mechanics of the extremist plot. Like
that's the thing that to me, like something like Extremis is just like boring. You're just you know, you're just taking boring kind of characters, CGIing them, and then
no, I agree.
Yeah.
I think, but I guess what I'm saying, that is why, even though I have a more visceral reaction to Iron Man 3 than I do to Iron Man still ranks above it because Iron Man is perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas Iron Man 3, the B story and C story and the like emotional arcs are like wonderful, and in my opinion, some of the best character work the MCU has done. But the actual plotting is take it or leave it.
Yeah. So, sorry, back to the twist.
Mm-hmm.
So Shane Black explained the concept of it being a twist like that, and I think getting where he's coming from is really cool. He basically explains that it's about what like fear is at the moment, and so what if you know, like, because he's meant to be this like big, huge, super terrorist, and then in the end, it's actually revealed that it's just a myth perpetuated by like
it's fake news.
A shared consciousness, essentially, which is kind of like tapping into the current political climate. You know, maybe it was a little bit before its time.
Oh shit!
But Kevin Feige said it was a huge risk. He said sometimes it's important to break tradition, even at the risk of alienating some purists.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah. That's interesting that they're quite happy to do that, and they do that again in Phase 3. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. But originally, it's been reported that originally the Mandarin twist would have revealed that it wasn't actually Aldrich Killian that was behind it all. It was a female,
my goodness.
possibly Rebecca Hall's character, I think. But Marvel said, no, people don't buy toys of females, so...
Yuck.
Yeah.
Yuck, Marvel. That's gross. Yeah. I'm not surprised. I don't know if we'll talk about this much, but I am deeply uncomfortable that unless you count Guardians of the Galaxy, every Marvel movie is about a straight white male until Black Panther.
Yeah.
So many, and even Guardians of the Galaxy, the clear protagonist is a straight white male.
Yeah.
That makes me so
and all the
uncomfortable.
villains until Ragnarok are straight white males.
Yeah.
Unless... Yeah. Well, I mean, they're various colours, but they're all white.
Yeah, and so that doesn't surprise me that Marvel would say something like that. Say what you want about the DC cinematic universe, but at least they did Wonder Woman as their third film.
Yeah, but also it's like, you're comparing doing the one of the maybe 3 to 5 most popular comic book characters of all time who's female, then having to kind of do, which is a bigger problem in Marvel.
That's what I was going to say. That's a more systematic issue that Marvel could have changed.
It's not like Wonder Woman was a huge risk.
No,
when it's like if you were to list DC characters, it's Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman,
No.
And so whereas Captain Marvel hasn't even always been a woman,
Yeah.
So it's a bit more of a but yeah, I mean, that is an issue with Marvel. I'm just saying that it's it's not necessarily risky to make a Wonder Woman film.
No, I didn't mean it was risky. I'm saying the opposite. It shouldn't be a risky move.
Oh yeah,
Marvel considers it a
we're
risky
pro-woman on this podcast.
So we talked about this last week as well. We have accounts on a website called Letterboxd, which lets you rank films. And about 6 months ago, I ranked my MCU films, and I did this with reckless abandon of a bunch of movies that I'd seen, most of them only seen once.
You posted it and were like, go ahead, challenge me on any of them. I'll fold immediately.
Yeah, it's true though, right? It's just like I was that... the only ones I wouldn't fold on, I would say, would be the Avengers being my favorite Marvel movie. That feels from my heart. You know what I mean?
Right,
that feels like it's in my heart. But any other film you could challenge, in my original ranking, my lowest one was Thor: The Dark World, and my second highest one was Thor: Ragnarok. And you could argue with me that Thor: The Dark World is better than Thor: Ragnarok. Those are two very bad examples for this analogy. But my point being, I'm not precious or wasn't precious at all about where I ranked them. And
the main one I would say, the main sort of thing I would say is that you were very anti-Cap originally.
I was anti every character except Iron Man until Phase 3.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I wasn't anti them. I just didn't care about them. I never saw any of their movies. The only other one I saw in the movies was Guardians of the Galaxy because I just didn't care about.
Which you didn't like.
Well, yeah. We'll talk more about that later. But yeah, so when we started doing our MCU rewatch, I have created a new ranking. So out of the 21 films in the original ranking I did, Iron Man 3 was 5th, which includes 2 films before, which we're not covering till Phase 3. And at the moment in my redo, Iron Man 3 is 3rd, but I don't expect my top 5 to change too much from my original ranking.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I've got it 3rd behind Iron Man 1 and the Avengers. So those are my top 3 Marvel movies at the moment. Interesting.
Iron Man 3 for me, I have seen all of these films multiple times, so aside from maybe 1 or 2 positioning, I don't expect mine to change, but I've ranked Iron Man 3 12th.
Nice.
And if you sort by average rating on Letterboxd, it comes in at 17th.
Too low. Imagine if you agreed vehemently with that. You put it 15th. 17's too low. Just 15th. 15th at least.
So one thing this film does is and it's a very deliberate choice, but it sort of strips back Tony. He's not really able to use a suit for kind of the second act of the film.
I love that, yeah.
And that's a really good choice. And especially coming off the back of the Avengers when everyone was like, how are they going to do solo movies now? Why don't they just call the Avengers? And that's a deliberate choice to answer that question, I guess. Why can't he call the Avengers? Because, his suit's down and his only phone was in it.
Yeah. And it also, it's later echoed in Spider-Man Homecoming when he tells Peter, if you're
nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it.
Which is could be seen as a very rich thing coming from Tony Stark. But I think Iron Man 3 actually justifies him being able to say that, because we see him stripped of his suit and he's still a capable superhero.
Yeah, well, even the fact that he made the suit, makes him valuable.
And it also is the first of the OG headlining 3 Marvel heroes, Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, having their "what if their thing is taken away from them" movie, which I would argue Winter Soldier does for Cap and Ragnarok does for Thor.
Yeah. We'll talk about what it is when we get to Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Because I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's not as explicit in Winter Soldier.
No, actually, now that I think about it, it's actually, if it's what if blank was taken away, it's very cleverly handled in Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Let's remember that and
remember
not forget
that
it when we talk about.
I'm gonna write it down. Oh fuck! I don't have a pen.
But it is a good it is a really good idea for your superhero sequel. I've talked a bit before on Cold Popture about one of the reasons I love Spider-Man 2 so much is because it's Spider-Man in crisis and he starts losing his web and he questions that whole movie is so excellent because it's about questioning the identity he achieved and mastered in the first film. And so it is a good thing to throw your superhero through in their sequel, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Thanks, man.
So this film has a very interesting cameo in it. So you've watched, there's a documentary on Netflix called Abducted in Plain Sight.
Yeah.
You've seen that? It's about this. If you haven't seen it, it's a very, very fucked up documentary, true crime. Check it out, because if you like being incredibly frustrated at the world and don't like enjoying things, then check this out.
Yeah. It's the Game of Thrones of documentaries.
Yeah. And it's about its subject, this little girl who was abducted twice in the 70s or 80s, is now all grown up, and she's an actress, and she's in Iron Man 3. So there's when we see inside a control room, when there's like the Mandarin broadcast breaks into programming, a blonde woman is like, "Oh, what's going on?" That's Jan Broberg.
Wow. Very cool. Another thing, are we moving on from Iron Man 3?
Not even close.
Not really.
Well, I don't know. Close, I guess. But.
I just want to say, I think another reason I love this movie so much is because Shane Black, he hasn't made enough good films for me to say he's one of my favorite directors, but he is one of my favorite directorial voices that desperately needs to be utilized better than The Predator.
Yeah.
So I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. It's one of my favorite movies.
So does Robert Downey Jr., and that's why when Jon Favreau stepped aside, he said, bring him in, and everyone sort of agreed that Shane Black is the only director that they'd be comfortable taking over Jon Favreau, because they were like, Jon Favreau is Iron Man. They're like, well, actually, Shane would do a pretty good job. Just a couple more little things.
Tell me them.
So one, this film famously had extra scenes shot for China, the Chinese release, which they hated them in China, and most people hate that they exist. But if you don't speak Chinese and don't want to look them up, they're all about the surgeon who removes the arc reactor from his chest at the end of the film, who's Chinese, and there's a woman in these scenes played by Fan Bingbing, who is that Chinese actress who went missing, and there was a whole big thing. I kept on seeing it, I read it, but she was in Iron Man 3, technically. She's part of the MCU.
She's part of our missing or murdered actors in movies that we've watched on this podcast.
She's back now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this film has the 2 people that went missing and then returned.
Who's the other one?
Jan Broberg from Abducted in Plain
Oh,
Sight.
of course.
Just
Duh.
talked about it. So it's all about, because it's glossed over in the film. He's just like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to get my arc reactor taken out, even though we established I couldn't do that. And then he just doesn't. It's very easy. But turns out this one Chinese surgeon is actually the only person in the entire world that could do it.
Oh, so it's necessary for the plot.
It's just if you want to just see this surgeon go about his daily life for like 4 minutes, then yeah, sure, it's necessary in the plot.
It
could be a line of dialogue, you know?
Yeah. It'd be hard to incorporate a character like that from earlier in the movie and make him relevant the whole way through so that he can save Iron Man at the end.
Yeah, exactly. This also the original final line. You like symmetry and dialogue and stuff. The original final line for this film was "I am Tony Stark," whereas now it's "I am Iron Man," which is the same as the last line from the first film. What do you think of "I am Tony Stark"?
That's all right, because the movie, the Iron Man 3. If you didn't know what was to come in the MCU, as we've talked about a little bit already, and as we'll talk about again, you would be forgiven for thinking this was Tony Stark's swan song, his bowing out of the series. When I first saw it, I thought that's what it was, you know.
And I think there was sort of, I don't know, contract disputes, or like it wasn't 100% that he was returning after this.
Well, they certainly leaned into that possibility, didn't they? I quite like I am Tony Stark in that kind of sense, but I also like I am Iron Man just for its symmetry. But what I think it would have been better if and I think this is what the line is a reference to, is if he said, "You know who I am," because at the start of the movie he has that written on a name tag, and that's kind of like a, you know, it's this cocky kind of thing that totally suits the character. You know who I am, you know, and he says it a few times towards the beginning. And so I think when he says I am Iron Man, I think that's an answer to you know who I am.
Interesting.
I've always kind of felt like that.
Cool.
But there is an argument that I am Tony Stark versus I am Iron Man is what we're saying about the suit versus the man thing.
Well,
he is Iron Man. He'll always be Iron
even
Man.
without the suit, he's Iron Man. Or like I am Tony Stark is like I'm a superhero even without the suit.
Yeah. Well, you can look at it either way, I guess.
Yeah, but apparently they wanted to like improve the like mystical qualities of it.
Interesting.
Now, a fun little thing that we can play along. This is my last note about Iron Man 3. Fun little thing that we can play along. And actually, I'll do that later on. One fun little thing that we can play along with.
I'm excited to play along with it, dude. You've been
I've been hyping it up for seconds now.
Yeah.
Is that in every film in Phase 2, a character loses an arm. In reference to, in the second film of the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke Skywalker loses an arm or a hand. So do you remember what it is in this film?
Yeah, it's one of the... every time I go to say Extremis, I nearly say Existenz, which is that Jude Law virtual reality video game movie. It's one of the Extremis soldiers. Right?
Killian. Killian loses
it is
an arm.
Killian,
in the final battle. But yeah, I think it might actually happen earlier as well. Speaking of Jude Law, he almost played Aldrich Killian. So
good. They look the same.
Yeah.
they have the same type.
It's funny. I remember like when Iron Man 3 was like about to come out, it was like if you were to tell me 5 years ago that Guy Pearce would be playing the villain in a Shane Black written and directed Iron Man film, so I wouldn't know what any of those things mean. But now, like it was only in the few years leading up to that all of those things meant something to me. Because Guy Pearce is one of my favorite actors.
Yeah.
And Shane Black again, after Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And
I think about that a lot with because when was the Civil War graphic novel written?
It was like 2006.
Was it? Okay. I remembered it being during, after the MCU had begun. And I always thought that was an interesting thing that the MCU was now adapting something that came into existence after it had started its birth.
The lineup of Guardians of the Galaxy that was adapted for the film only started in 2008.
Wow, okay.
So there you go.
There you go.
So next we have Thor: The Dark World.
One more thing about Iron Man 3.
Yes.
Another thing I don't like about it
Okay.
I don't like that the president's a main character, or that he's like very important to the climax of it.
Right, okay.
I just don't think it's cool when the president's a main character.
Okay.
No, I'll probably cut that part out. All right, go on.
So Thor the Dark World was directed by Alan Taylor. That also came out in 2013.
What has Alan Taylor done?
Game of Thrones. He was a TV director. So this was the height of their gun for hire kind of grab anyone who's ever directed anything.
Damn, we missed our window.
I know. Yeah, so I mean, now's as good a time as it. No, actually, we'll save it. We'll save the original director for just a moment.
Okay.
AJ, can you just tell us what this is about?
Yep. Thor the Dark World. This is very, very slightly adapted just from what Wikipedia says. I think I added one sentence. Thor teams up with Loki to save the 9 realms from the Dark Elves, led by the vengeful Malekith, who intends to plunge the universe into darkness using a weapon known as the Ether. And the Ether is like a floaty liquid cloud thing.
But is it is that what all it appears to be?
I know it's an Infinity Stone, but I don't know what Infinity Stone it is.
It's the Reality Stone.
Okay.
So
what does the Reality Stone do?
Reality can be whatever I want.
Wow. And is that emphasized with the ether being used? This could have been a real fun movie if they'd leaned into the reality altering.
Yeah, well, I think around this time when they were like, we're setting up the Infinity Stones, and they weren't quite sure how powerful to make them, because like in the comics is like the reality stone, reality gem in the comics gives you complete control over reality. Time gives you complete control over time. And so they were like, we actually have to nerf or, make them a little bit weaker in the movies. Otherwise it's just too OP. And whereas, which kind of
use an
sets up
Overwatch reference?
What?
Nerf?
That's not Overwatch.
Isn't it?
No.
I've only ever heard it in the context of Overwatch.
Oh, really? No, it's a reference to Nerf guns.
Oh. Because Nerf guns aren't as powerful as real guns.
Well, yeah, I think they made Nerf guns weaker.
That's such an understatement.
What?
Nerf guns aren't as powerful as real guns.
The first established use of the term was in Ultima Online, as a reference to the Nerf brand of toys whose bullets are soft and less likely to cause serious injury. Interesting.
Very good.
Okay, anyway, so they weren't sure how strong to make them, and I think they probably made the right choice.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know how it works in the comics, but sure, why not? So, what do you reckon this says on Rotten Tomatoes?
This has got to be the lowest one of them all, right?
It is the lowest one of them all, but what do you think it's sitting on?
Like 60?
60 what?
9. Too high, damn it.
Oh, it is too high. 66.
Yeah.
And it is the lowest rated of the MCU.
While this was the lowest rated in my original MCU ranking,
now it's number 1.
No, now it's second to lowest. I put it above The Incredible Hulk and the original Thor.
Which is interesting, because The Incredible Hulk is on your list of films that you love but everyone hates, and now it's the lowest rated in the MCU.
That list is like relative to how much I love it to relative to how much everyone hates it.
Yeah, because it's called like AJ's most loved films that everyone hates or something like that, and it's got like that and Iron Man 2 on it, and I was like, you would not go out to bat for these films.
I would just be
like, hey, actually, no, I quite like it.
Incredible Hulk occupies the same space in my mind as something like Space Jam. Well, but
you hate it.
I hate Space Jam, but I dislike Space Jam. But other people insist Space Jam's a good movie, and it's not. And Incredible Hulk's like that for me, where it was one of the only MCU films I saw multiple times, and I like it, but I can objectively see that it's not as focused as something like Thor the Dark World, and I just thought it was a minor improvement on Thor. Like, those bottom 3 are very like, I don't, again, you could convince me Thor's better than Thor the Dark World, but I just thought it had slightly more stuff, slightly more going for it.
Sure.
I'm not passionate.
Yeah. I ranked this 21st. out of 21. Letterboxd, if you rank by average rating, ranks at 20th, so second to last.
What's last?
I believe Incredible Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
So this film had a pretty troubled production. It's hard to find a director at first, but then their answers were prayed. They prayed for answers and they got them. When Patty Jenkins signed on, Patty Jenkins, who had only directed one film at that time, that was Monster. She's now directed 2 because she directed Wonder Woman. However, she left the project eventually. She's referred to, hers would have, I think, focused more on the Romeo and Juliet kind of love story, the forbidden love between Thor and Jane. And instead, we got this.
I remember reading a statement about her leaving. Do you have that written down?
No, but if you want to say it from memory, go for it.
It was something like she basically, one of the reasons she left was because she didn't want the first woman-directed Marvel movie to be about a love story.
Yeah,
she was like, it's so typical, and it's so, it would be a disservice to woman directors everywhere to make this.
Yeah, and good on her for making that call. I'm sure it was a big call to make.
But I also think the Romeo and Juliet aspect of the first 2 Thor movies is very, very forced. And it wants us to think it's Romeo and Juliet, but
it's
Natalie
actually
Portman,
more like Nomeo and Juliet because it sucks.
Well, no, Romeo's all good. It's the Juliet that...
I'm saying the movie Nomeo and Juliet sucks. I'm not saying...
Oh, okay.
I'm not just making up a word.
I thought you were making a portmanteau of No and Romeo.
Nice. I wasn't, but very nice.
Romeo and Juliet? There you go.
Oh, yeah, good.
Natalie Portman, that's who we talked about last week, does not want to be in these films. And while she at least showed up for the first Thor movie,
her acting ability didn't show up for the second.
And she's unconscious for a lot of this film. And I actually thought that Kat Dennings' Darcy had the lion's share of that. Of who Natalie Portman's role or Jane Foster's role in the story should have been.
Yeah. Okay. I somewhat agree.
Yeah. But not completely, and here's why.
I don't think Darcy necessarily should have been as big a part of the film as she...
I don't think she should have been.
And
I'm
the
saying
fact
she
that they
was.
gave the annoying sidekick because she hires an intern and he doesn't really do anything. He's not played by anyone of note.
No.
Speaking of people of note, Chris O'Dowd's in this film as well. And you'll be forgiven for forgetting that because Chris O'Dowd forgot. There's an interview with him after Infinity War where someone's like, I do just want to bring up... the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the fate of the fan favorite character Richard, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, I'm in those."
Is this our first franchise in which a character in one film has been named Richard and a character in another film has been named Alexander, which is my real name?
Who's Alexander? Oh,
Alexander's the bad guy in Captain America.
Yeah.
Can't remember his last name.
Alexander Pierce. Yeah.
Okay.
Alexander Penis. That's your full name. So what do we have to say about this film? Despite all its flaws, and I mean, it's just like the film's just it's very if you're describing what you don't like about Marvel, you're describing this film.
Hell yeah, dude. What a great way to put it. So this is what I feel is the this was the first film where it wasn't the first film that had this, but it was the first film where
it's not the first film. Don't get me wrong.
This wasn't the first film in the MCU that did this, but it was the first film where someone brought it up, where they were like, "Man, they really wasted the talent they used for the villain in this film, didn't they?" You could say the same thing about previous Marvel movies, especially I don't know, Guy Pearce and Iron Man 3 or whatever. But yeah, Christopher Eccleston, who's a fantastic actor, was cast as Malekith and has one of the most unnotable, uninteresting.
Oh, he's the worst villain Marvel's done.
Yeah.
And again, it's if you complain about the villains and why they suck, you're describing this one to a T. And Christopher Eccleston hated playing Malekith, and has said that like Marvel lied to him about the makeup and stuff like that, because it would take him like 6 to 8 hours each day to get into the makeup, and Marvel didn't tell him about that, and so he was quite upset.
Is that why he's upset?
Yeah, well, and
I thought he was upset because it was a shit villain.
Probably. And I mean, like, Natalie Portman tried to get out of the film when Patty Jenkins left, but she was contractually obligated, and she was like, well, I'm not going to try. Yeah, so there we go. That's I don't know what else to say about this film.
The saving grace of this film would be Stellan Skarsgård, who's
watching these films again, I'm like, man, he's so cool.
Yeah.
He's like, they kind of, even though this film's like kind of super serious, it also leans into the comedy in some weird ways, like giving the quirky sidekick a quirky sidekick, and then having like Stellan Skarsgård run around naked at Stonehenge and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, you know, you're reducing quite a good character to a silly joke.
And a fun piece of unplanned, didn't ask for your permission, poorly placed statistics is that this is our second franchise in which more than one film in the series came out in the same year that stars Stellan Skarsgård, who gets naked.
Very cool.
Because he got naked in Nymphomaniac.
Yes.
Which released both films at the same time.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Thank you. So, for all of its flaws, this film does contain one of my favorite moments in the MCU, and that is when Loki and Thor are gearing up to leave Asgard. They are wandering through, and Loki's like, oh, surprised you're trusting me. And then he turns Thor into Sif because he can, like, you know, project things. And then he's like, oh, maybe you'd be more comfortable if I, you know, was one of your new friends, seeing as how you love them so much. And then he turns into Chris Evans as Captain America. And he's like, hey, want to have a conversation about justice and God bless America. And it's so great. I squealed when I saw that in the cinema. And that's funny because you can see on the DVD or whatever online that Tom Hiddleston did the cameo in the Captain America suit and doing the accent and acting it out. So he did it. And I think it was maybe going to be like, if they couldn't get Chris Evans, you know, he was just going to dress up as him, and that's fine. But then Chris Evans came to set and had to imitate Tom Hiddleston making fun of him.
That's great.
And so he said he saw it. He's like, oh, I've been trying not to play Captain America like that for 2 years now. Because, you know, it's so over the top, God bless America kind of stuff.
Is Chris Evans' cameo in Thor: The Dark World the only non-post-credits cameo of a main Avenger?
Yeah, I mean, if we're counting Incredible Hulk's Tony Stark scene as being post credits.
Yeah.
Probably. Although, I guess Chris Evans appears in Spider-Man Homecoming in the post credit scene, but he is also earlier in the film as well.
Yeah, but so this is the first one that happens in.
Yeah, sure.
And it only happens with Chris Evans.
yeah. He's not doing anything.
I thought the climax of not the climax, the part with when they go to the Dark World itself and they fight some of the villains and Loki gets fake killed. I thought that was such a weak scene.
Yeah, and 100%. And the thing about that scene as well is it's just an open plain.
Oh,
and
it's boring.
The fight scene at the start is just a forest on Earth. Like, there's nothing magical about these. And for all of, like, Thor's issue, the first Thor's problems as well, I think it's Asgard is beautiful. Like the Rainbow Bridge, the Bifrost, everything looks so great. And I don't think I mentioned this in the first Thor, in the first podcast we did on this, but the design of the Rainbow Bridge in the first Thor is fucking genius. Like, in the comics, it's literally just a rainbow. It's just 7 strips of color that they run across to go to Earth. And the redesign of that into this, like, crystally kind of multicolored, beautiful thing which was, you know, an idea that came from the first Thor and stuck around, is genius. It looks so good. I love the way the Rainbow Bridge looks in the films.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to talk about quickly. I mentioned that I squealed in the cinema when I saw Cap show up, and I've got a bit of a funny story about the first time I saw Thor: The Dark World.
This better be fucking hilarious, dude.
Thor: The Dark World was coming out. I was very excited, and so I got my friend Paul to buy us tickets to the midnight premiere because we're both very excited for the film. And then the day of it was that night, he was very sick, and so he had to be like, sorry, I can't go. Take someone else. Grab the tickets, take someone else. So I invited my girlfriend at the time, and we were like, sweet, we'll go. And then he was like, oh, actually, I'm better now. Can I have the ticket back? And I was like, okay. So it was this awkward thing. And then he came over to my house, and we watched the first Thor. And then we went to the cinema. It was, like at 11:30 at night. And we went to the cinema, and I was like, there's not a lot of other people here. And then the upstairs of the mall was completely shut. And I was like, you'd think that they would open it up by now, seeing as how they've got a movie on in 20 minutes. And there was someone vacuuming, and we were like, hey, we're here for like the midnight screen. She was like, what? No. And I was like, Paul, can I see those tickets? And I looked at it, and it said Thor: The Dark World, 12 p.m. Which, of course, as anyone who has passed primary school would know, that's midday. 12 a.m. or 12:01 a.m. as the midnight screenings were always scheduled for is midnight. Then we were like, oh fuck, well let's gun it to another mall and go to one of their midnight screenings, because the mall that we booked for just didn't happen to be doing midnight screenings. And then we wouldn't have been able to get there in time, and I think they'd sold out, so we went home. And I didn't go to a midnight screening.
And that was better than what the movie turned out to be when you did see it. If we're talking about first experiences seeing this movie, this is a real good segue into Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Tim Miller directed the prologue of Thor: The Dark World.
Okay.
I just wanted to get that out there before we move on.
Yeah.
And also, Chris Hemsworth grew out his actual hair. That's why his hair looks better in this film.
Oh, cool.
And also, the loss of an arm in this film is Loki cuts off Thor's arm. So, talking of first time seeing the films.
Yes. I saw Thor: The Dark World and Captain America: The Winter Soldier for the first and only time until this podcast, about a day before Avengers: Age of Ultron hit cinemas, which I really wanted to see because I loved the Avengers. And yeah, I watched this with two. They won't be listening, so I can say this about them. Actually, they might be listening. I think
the two fucking worst people.
It's not a mean thing. This is seriously like two of the most cynical people I know is what I was going to say. So not necessarily a bad thing or a thing they would disagree with being called. So we got out, I think we rented Thor: The Dark World and Captain America: The Winter Soldier from like the vestiges of a video shop near our house that were Video Easy that was closing down. And we watched them all in the same night. Talked all the way, watched them both in the same night, talked all the way through them, made fun of them, didn't give them the... I'm ashamed to say we didn't give the films the attention that every film deserves if you're watching it. And so my memory of Thor: The Dark World was somewhat accurate, that it was like another Thor movie that I had to sit through to get context for an Avengers movie, and Captain America: The Winter Soldier was another Captain America movie that I had to sit through to get context for the new movie. And it's just funny, I guess, that that is my opinion on Thor: The Dark World. Hasn't changed much since that last viewing, but my view of Captain America: The Winter Soldier was it is a lot different to what it is now.
Because the amount of times I've heard you say, like, I don't see what the big deal is about Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
I've never said that.
It's zero. But no, I have heard you say, like, like it's overrated, or you don't see what the
okay,
big
maybe
deal
I have
is.
said that in the past, but as in understanding its place in the way people talk about it in the MCU and superhero films in general, I came to accept that I just didn't pay it enough attention.
Yeah. I think I saw that evolution over time. I remember you saying like it's not even good, or like to. And I remember the first time you were like, I've actually only seen it once and I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, that's why.
That's the problem. No, I fully admit to that. But in my defense, people didn't, at least in my circles, I'm sure they did. I'm sure.
At least in my defense.
I'm sure I'm wrong in saying this. I at least feel like no one talked about the Winter Soldier being the best one until after Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
I never heard anyone talk about it with particular praise until after Age of Ultron.
Sure. But we're about to talk about it right now. So, the big one, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, 2014. Alexander, what is this about?
Well, Richard, all right, again, copied. I think this is just straight copied from Wikipedia. Wikipedia is great for synopses. We should have been using them this whole time. Captain America, Black Widow, and a war vet turned unofficial Avenger, Falcon. I added that part.
You added the word Falcon. Like, they called him, like, a war vet turned unofficial Avenger, but didn't have his name.
Yeah. They joined forces to uncover a conspiracy within S.H.I.E.L.D., which is the... Have we talked about S.H.I.E.L.D. enough? S.H.I.E.L.D's like the agency that creates the Avengers.
Yeah, the branch of the government that...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they uncover a conspiracy within S.H.I.E.L.D. while facing a mysterious assassin known as the Winter Soldier.
Very
Winter
nice.
does not have an H in it, and therefore did not need to be pronounced like that.
So this is directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, or affectionately known as the Russo brothers.
This is the first one?
This is their first one. The first
Wow,
foray.
what a momentous...
It is.
thing.
And so the directors they had their pick of whoever. They narrowed down to the Russo brothers, George Nolfi, who directed The Adjustment Bureau, and F. Gary Gray, who did Fate of the Furious recently, but he pulled out of the running to do Straight Outta Compton.
Straight Outta Compton's a good movie.
So the Russos were
Well, they were just picked arbitrarily.
well, they were sought out after the genre-bending two-parter paintball finale of season 2 of Community, because they directed
Right.
A Fistful of Paintballs and For a Few Paintballs More.
You remember that Community joke where they talk about how Marvel films are flavorless?
Yeah,
Is that because they have ties to the Marvel franchise?
yeah. It's like ribbing your mates kind of thing.
I never.
Because I'm pretty
interpreted
sure they specifically reference this movie,
this. Right.
or like the Russo brothers, or like there's something that's very much like, we're all in on the joke kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So this movie, what do you think it has on RT?
98.
Too high.
Too high.
90.
Knew it as I said it. 90.
90,
Yep.
and it's the 8th highest. So
Yep.
you got the numbers right.
It's only the 8th highest.
Yep.
Really?
In terms of Rotten Tomatoes, yeah.
Wow. I ranked originally, lol, on my original Cinematic Universe ranking before I'd seen it again. I ranked it 11th, which, judging by the feedback I got for this list, was my most controversial placing. Putting this 11th. But I mean, 8th isn't that much higher than 11th.
Is that what it is now?
No, but 8th is where
Oh,
Rotten
yeah,
Tomatoes
sure.
is. Now it is ranked 4th. So Avengers, Iron Man 3, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Its relationship in my mind with Iron Man 3 is, if you're angry that I put it behind Iron Man 3, it's very much like a decision
Personal,
from
yeah.
my heart, not a
Yeah.
decision from my head.
Yeah, you were
Right.
talking about this last night. That you were like, Winter Soldier probably is better.
Yeah, it probably is, and it's more clean. It's certainly a more perfect film. Iron Man 3 just has a place in my heart, I think. But I guess more of a place in my heart than The Incredible Hulk, with which this same thought process and logic did not apply.
So on my overall ranking, I ranked it 4th. And
Same as me.
yep. But I'm ranking out of a lot more films.
Yeah, that's true.
And Letterboxd, if you sort by average ranking, it's 5th.
It's not as for one that's often like unanimously considered, well, not unanimous was a very poor choice of words there. One that's often considered, at least in people I talk to, as the best Marvel film. It's not. It doesn't really reflect that with its online or like review or clout.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to tell you like once I tell you what's above it, it's like okay.
Oh, I know, it'll be Infinity War.
Yeah, so Infinity War's 1. Spoilers for Phase 3 of this podcast. Infinity War's number 1, Guardians, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther. So Guardians is the only other one that's like, oh, wow. But the other 3 are very much like, there was a huge campaign to rank this 5 stars, And also, Letterboxd is more popular. Like, it's getting more popular, so films that come out later are often weighted higher. So, yeah. Captain America Winter Soldier, this was one that I saw and was like, cool. I wasn't excited for a new Captain America movie. I liked the first one, and I still defend it, but I was like, oh, the one after this is Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm so excited to see that. I can't wait to get to Age of Ultron. So this was very much a stepping stone. Russo's didn't excite me. And then I saw it, and I was like, this is pretty good. And then a couple months later, I was like, fuck, that movie was real good.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those ones that at the time, I was just like, yep, cool, tick to the box. But then the more I think about it, the more I was like, man, that actually really was a really cool film. And then thinking about it in the years since then, I'm like, man, that is actually such a good film. And then watching it the other night, I remember because I was so like, AJ, you need to watch this and you need to like fully get in the world of it and fully accept that it is one of the best ones. And then watching it again, I was like, man, this is actually way better than I remember. And it's like, I remember it being real good.
Well, how do you think I feel?
Terrible. You must feel like an idiot.
This went up, 6 spaces or something like that in my rank? I mean, more films. But I think one of the things that's standing against it is Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, and this film. Their posters all have the same colour palette of like desaturated dark green.
Yeah, and that's where we start to get into that issue that everyone complains about with Marvel and stuff like that. But
yeah, for what's considered by many to be the best MCU film, it is smack bang in the middle of Marvel's like kind of darkest or like least positively reviewed, I want to say phase, but not referring to the phases themselves.
Yeah,
because I think it goes beyond phase 2.
Yeah,
malaise.
Sure.
The malaise phase.
But yeah, it is the gas leak phase. The little community reference. Yeah, so this introduced the Russos into the world of the Avengers, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and boy, are they here to stay until they're not doing anything after Endgame.
They kind of usurped Joss Whedon, really.
And we'll talk about that more probably when we get to Age of Ultron or Infinity War. At some point, I'm sure we'll fucking talk about it.
Yeah.
There's like 9 hours left of podcast about this.
So the thing that's so good about Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Yep.
I think I was watching it and it reminded me of Watchmen. It feels like it's the Watchmen of the MCU. Because it's one of the only ones that really disrupts the foundations of the series.
Yeah.
Like, we talked about how Iron Man 3 is risky Iron Man 3 is risky in a more obtrusive and in-your-face way with its villain. Captain America, the Winter Soldier is risky in the sense that it's like, it's foundational risk. It's stuff that changes everything before it and everything after it.
Yeah.
Because you find out basically that all of S.H.I.E.L.D. is corrupt. Which is real cool. And the basically just the fact that it's like validating a conspiracy theory people have about real government, and
sure.
So I thought it was real smart. I really loved how it kind of becomes a buddy cop movie between Cap and Black Widow. I thought their chemistry was really good, and I'm glad they didn't get together, even though they're the two most attractive people on the planet, and didn't, the flirtatiousness between them is like utilized at some point when they're trying to blend in. They like kiss on the escalator, and then they have a fun conversation later on about how she asked him if she was his first kiss since the 40s, which all that stuff I really dig, like learning, especially someone like Black Widow, who, having only seen these films once, I had very little memory of her character, like in terms of her personality. So it's cool to see her having a bit more fun and personality in her characterization. So yeah, I really like that. That's probably my favorite thing about it.
Yeah.
Both those things, the conspiracy theory plot and the dynamic. I'd say the one thing where I thought, okay, this is what separates it from being a like renowned conspiracy thriller to a superhero conspiracy thriller, is when they find like a computer station and like the digitization of Toby Jones's character. What's his name?
Adam Zola.
From the first Captain America, like talks to them. I was like, yeah, this wouldn't fly in the Adjustment Bureau. You know, this wouldn't fly in
and straight out of Compton.
Yeah.
I really like that part because Zola.
I'm not saying I didn't like it. I'm saying I understand it was comic book.
It's very comic booky, and yeah, that's my point. Is that Zola in the comics is like a robot with a face that's like on a TV screen kind of thing.
Interesting.
So when we first see Zola in the first Avenger, there's like this bulbous bit of glass that has a warped Toby Jones face on it, and you're like, oh, it's Zola, and then he says a couple of lines there, and then the camera moves and you see that it's actually just a human being who was looking through a telescope or something like that to warp his face to look like his comic book appearance.
That's almost like what I was saying last week about name dropping their cheesy superhero names in a natural way.
Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah, it's having a fun, sort of somewhat realistic, I guess, or like grounded way to have his comic book form in the film. And so I thought that was really cool. But yeah, this is sort of one of the... is cited as when people talk about how Marvel's so good because the films are so varied, because like Ant-Man's a heist movie and this is a like 70s political thriller. They're superhero movies with flavors of that. Like I wouldn't go so far as to say that that it is a political thriller, but
I agree.
There is some really cool stuff like Robert Redford playing the villain, who's, you know, from like All the President's Men, those kind of movies.
Yeah. And Gary Shandling.
Yeah, Gary Shandling's back.
Famous political thriller actor Gary Shandling.
And his last on-screen film role before his death.
Yeah, isn't it wild that they took like kind of like the comedic put upon, not even villain, but, you know, dumbass character from Iron Man 2 and made him a Nazi. A secret Nazi.
Yeah, it's cool that they brought him back. Like,
yeah, I agree. I really like they brought him back. And one of the scenes, you first see him and he's talking so creepily about this, like, journalist, this hot young journalist who's going to go back to his house and bang.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's like, Shandling, you sell it too well, mate. You're doing this too well.
Yeah, Gary Shandling's one of those guys that I've only kind of learnt about in the last couple of years. So it's cool seeing him in this kind of role when it's like he's actually like a comedian.
Yeah.
And he's playing this real creepy Nazi in these films. But yeah, another thing we're talking about, like why this film is so good and why it works, I guess, is like 2014, you had Captain America: The First Avenger, which wasn't horribly well received. In the Avengers, he's kind of just like the goody two shoes, and then you have his very washed out looking new film directed by a couple of guys from TV. It's right before Guardians of the Galaxy, which is the one everyone's excited for. And it's like, let's just get this over and done with. And then right at the start of the film, he like, you know, he dives onto this boat from a plane and just kicks this guy overboard. And it's fucking brutal and it looks awesome. And it's just like, yeah, this is going to be a fucking cool movie. And I think, like, I love that scene at the start because no one expected this film to be like good or cool. Because like Captain America isn't really cool. He's kind of a dweeb. But this film specifically made him a great character. And rewatching the films, even going back to the first Avenger, I'm like, man, he's actually one of, if not my favorite characters. Because
I think what's so special about this film as well is that Captain America as a moniker for the character goes from being its kind of origins in World War II propaganda to now quite a cynical and sad moniker. Like, what is America? You know, like it's America is the shadow governments and these conspiracies, and he's the captain, you know. And so I think people have talked about that a bit, but it doesn't really come up in the film. But I think and maybe it's more implicit in Civil War. I can't remember, but there's a sadness in being called Captain America and being the character he is. And going through the things he goes through.
Like we talked about Iron Man being minus the whatever, and then Ragnarok obviously is Thor minus the hammer.
There we go.
The Winter Soldier is kind of like minus government or minus order, I guess.
Yeah, and he does lose his shield and costume for somewhat. Does he lose his shield? He loses his costume. He's
not real. Yeah, he can't.
He's in mufti for a lot of it, and my point being, that's what it's actually called. I don't know why you're laughing.
just referring to as being in mufti.
What if someone's not wearing a uniform? They're in mufti. It's nothing to do with school.
Yeah, no, it's just funny.
Captain America bought in $2 for Mufti Day, gold coin donation. My point being is, like, it's not as explicit as Thor Ragnarok or Iron Man 3 in taking away the costume, but it is there, and it is taking away the government. It's taking away America from him.
Yeah,
he's now an American fugitive.
Because he talks about, he mentions in the film that it's like, the world's at war, and then he gets put on ice, and he wakes up and he's told that they won, but did they really?
Yeah.
Like, what did we actually win?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, and it's kind of touched on again in Age of Ultron when we see like his worst fear is that the war is over. And so I love and I wish kind of it was explored more on the films that Captain America needs war to feel important and to like feel like he has a purpose, and that's such an interesting character flaw, I guess, that like, you know, like needing war and like not feeling a purpose when there's no one to fight, when he's such like a do-good kind of character, but he's inherently violent in his nature.
Yeah. We haven't talked about the Winter Soldier at all, like the character.
Yeah. So the Winter Soldier is spoilers for the Winter Soldier and every following film.
And every film by Marvel. Like
yeah. So the Winter Soldier is Lieutenant James Buchanan Barnes, who is Cap's best friend from the first film, who tragically died when he fell from a train. But he didn't die. He just lost his arm, Hey,
come on.
So that's the arm loss for this film, and came back as the Winter Soldier. He's been brainwashed, has had his memory wiped, and so Cap has this kind of, you know, this thing of like, once he finds out who it is, he doesn't want to fight him anymore. You know, understandably, I wouldn't want to fight you. Actually, I love fighting. I would beat the shit out of fucking.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, so that is like a really interesting thing. And I remember when the trailer for Winter Soldier came out, I was talking to someone at broadcasting school about, and I was like, oh, it looks pretty cool, eh? And he was like, yeah, but like, I don't know, it just looks so like inconsequential because like the Winter Soldier's like nobody, it's just some guy, so like who cares? And I was like,
oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, what a weirdly specific you know, complaint.
Yeah, it's almost like you know,
couldn't be more wrong.
Yeah, it's like he knew what it was and was setting up a sentence to prove himself wrong.
Yeah, but it is quite cool. The character of the Winter Soldier as well is quite interesting, because essentially for decades in comics, like there was the three characters you can't bring back, were Spider-Man's parents. Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, Bruce Wayne's parents from Batman, and Bucky Barnes. So, like, he was dead for, like, 50, 60 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But the character was sort of brought back because just some kid grew up really liking the character of Bucky Barnes, and then his whole life wanted to become a comic book writer, and then finally got that opportunity and thought, I'm going to bring back my old pal Bucky Barnes. And it was very well received. The Winter Soldier is considered, you know, people love that character in the comics.
It's such an interesting character to feel like you need to bring back. I wonder what it was about Bucky Barnes that this dude like loved in this original incarnation.
Yeah. A few little Easter eggs in this film. So one, I remember being the only person in the cinema that laughed at this. And I wonder if you picked up on it. Did you pick up on any little fun little Easter eggs into the end of the film?
Yep, but you tell me them and I'll confirm that I knew them.
Just give me one.
A missing person shows up in this film.
Ah, you're right. No, you're not. So Nick Fury, quote unquote, dies in this film, and then it turns out he's not dead. But he does continue to fake his own death, and we see his tombstone at the end of the film. Do you remember what it says on the tombstone?
I don't. What does it say?
It says, like, Nick Fury, and then it says, in quotation marks, the path of the righteous man, ... Ezekiel 25:17.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that
It's
is
so funny.
the fictional Bible verse that Samuel Jackson's character quotes a few times in Pulp Fiction, and it's only up for a brief second kind of thing. And in the cinema, I was like, ah, and then I like tap the shoulder of the person. I was like, oh, you won't get it.
I like the fact that the fictional Bible verse is canon in the MCU.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, as Pulp Fiction set in the same universe as the Winter Soldier? And the other little fun Easter egg for you is, so there's like the Captain America exhibit that he goes to, and Gary Sinise, Lieutenant Dan himself, is the voice of the exhibit. He's the announcer. So,
Well, I'll be a son of a gun.
oh my gosh, a son of a James gun.
Oh.
No, another fun little Easter egg, and you probably know about this, but at the start of the film, when Cap first meets Sam, who's Falcon, they're talking about, he's like, oh, it must be crazy having woken up.
I know
like,
this one.
everything's different.
I understand this reference. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, and he says, oh, like, food's better, the internet's great, been catching up, and then he says, Marvin Gaye, Trouble Man soundtrack, check it out, and he says, I'll add it to the list.
Which is a weird piece of pop culture to love. I've never even heard of that song before. Is it a song or an album?
It's an album, the Trouble Man. Well, I mean, and the song Trouble Man appears later in the film. But I would say it's probably not in your wheelhouse. Marvin Gaye, 70s film soundtrack, probably not, the
How
AJ
dare
special.
you?
But so this had different, his because we see a shot of his list as he adds Trouble Man soundtrack to it. And not each country, but they made a bunch of different versions of this list for each country. And they had a thing where it was like, you vote online for what Cap should write in his list. So every country had Thai food, Star Wars / Trek, Nirvana, and then in brackets band, Rocky, and in brackets Rocky 2 ? And Trouble Man soundtrack. In the US, which is the version on the Blu-ray for some reason, has I Love Lucy, Moon Landing, Berlin Wall, Up Plus Down. Imagine like someone writing like, you have to like look up the Berlin Wall, and he's like, oh, well, he's like, oh, and like when it went up and he's like, oh, up and down,
and they're like, oh yeah, and then like, oh, and I Love Lucy was real good.
Yeah, Steve Jobs, Apple, and Disco. So in the UK, you've also got the Beatles, Sir Sean Connery, and Sherlock.
I thought you were going to say Saoirse Ronan.
Yeah.
Like, she's real good in what movie had come out with Saoirse Ronan in 2014? The Grand Budapest Hotel.
Nah.
That
was 2014. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Came out in January as well. Very cool. Very nice.
Very good reference.
So there was a version for New Zealand and Australia, which had
Wow.
AC/DC, Space Travel, Steve Irwin, Skippy the Bush Kangaroo, and Tim Tams. Like, who the fuck is telling, like, Captain Steve Rogers, check out Skippy the Bush Kangaroo? Which is kind of why I wasn't 100% on board with, like, this, that it's like, because it's supposed to be like, he's an international hero, he's not just American. Which was a worry when they were making the film. They're like, it's not going to have international appeal because he's just Captain America. So they were like, he's a hero for everyone. You want you guys to feel represented.
Imagine if the New Zealand one was like Pavlova and Nick Minute, Jason Gunn.
It's Nick Minute.
It's like clearly he's been talking to a New Zealander.
But so
Brotown, you got to check out Brotown, man. Which for our international listeners is like New Zealand's The Simpsons, which aired for
which is how they describe it.
very brief spattering of time in the early 2000s. We had a cartoon called Brotown that I was never allowed to watch as a kid.
Yeah, you didn't miss much.
I've seen it since.
Yeah. So Italy
a lot
has...
of poo jokes. A lot of poo jokes in that show.
Yeah, there was. Italy has Vasco Rossi, Ferrari's victories at the F1 Grand Prix, and Roberto Benigni. French one has a few, but it's got Fifth Element and Daft Punk. Korea has Old Boy. Latin America has Shakira. And I found this out while watching years ago, watching the special feature about this. But Brazil has Rafael Nadal and Chupa Chups.
Chupa Chups?
Do you know it's pronounced Chupa Chup? Like the lollipop Chupa Chups.
I recognise that it's pronounced that way, but seeing as it's a stupid decision, I choose to ignore it.
Yeah, Chupa Chups, which I guess aren't like an international thing, I suppose. They're like a popular Brazilian candy. It's like a lollipop. They're pronounced
Gotta
Chupa
be New
Chups,
Zealand's
and we
most
call them Chupa
popular
Chups.
lollipop as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Nice.
Can I ask you, AJ, in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, biologically, how old do you think Captain America is supposed to be?
When is Winter Soldier set?
2014. So I'm talking biologically as in what his body thinks it is, not because it was frozen for...
He's got to be like 29.
Yeah, he's 28.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It seems so weird that he's that young. But it makes sense because he just signed up for the army.
Was Chris Evans that young?
I do not think so.
Sorry, I don't need you to find out how young Chris Evans is. I'm saying it's canon that he was frozen at 27.
Yeah. And Black Widow's 29.
Oh, an older woman. They don't get together. I need to make this clear. They don't get together. Yeah. Okay. So. What else should we keep talking about Winter Soldier? Is there more stuff?
Yes, I do want to keep talking about Winter Soldier because one thing that you don't like, but I don't mind, is those honest trailers that they do. So Screen Junkies, if you're not familiar with them, Screen Junkies do honest trailers for films. So it's like just a way to poke fun at films. They're often lumped in with CinemaSins, which is actual garbage.
I honestly can't tell the difference. However, I am comfortable announcing that I'm not a big fan of honest trailers because they seem to love inviting people on their show that don't like honest trailers. So whatever.
Yeah, but like the general difference, and often there's been quite a few times where people are like, "This is trash," and then they've said, "Actually, now that I've looked into honest trailers, it's not as bad as CinemaSins."
What a reputation to have.
Yeah. Like, CinemaSins is a moron pretending to be a legitimate film critic, whereas I guess Honest Trailers is more like, hey, we're in on the joke too, or at least like trying to be. And if you look at the two of them, one is like an asshole that wants to be a film critic. The other one's made with love to poke fun at films.
I guess, but your average person probably isn't going to see the difference between those two. Exactly.
Things. But like there's numerous examples of celebrities calling them out and then being like, oh, actually I was wrong. But they brought the Russos on to direct to the Winter Soldier honest trailer. And the Winter Soldier honest trailer is pretty much just like it's actually real good. Like, and because that's the thing, like they say like we're honest trailers, we don't just nitpick the films. It's like if the film's real good, they'll just say that. And then so there's a bit where they're like, okay, I guess these are some flaws, and it's just like lists a couple of like potential flaws, but it's like, but this bit's fucking cool. And then the Russos said that while like developing the film, they actually would talk about honest trailers a lot, and said that while making the film, they were trying their hardest to like honest trailer proof it.
Wow, that's really cool.
So that's so funny to think that like on set these guys are like they said they were talking about certain scenes and they're like, oh, they're going to give us hell for this bit, and they said that for every like logical leap the film has to make, they made sure to put like something real cool in there as well.
Yeah.
So they said, can, if we have to do something a little bit dumb, can we at least make it look real cool or chuck like a fuck yeah moment in there so that it kind of cancels each other out? And you could say in some ways that it's like, oh no, like, internet criticism is like affecting the way films are made now and they're not going to take risks. But in a way, I mean, like for these kind of films especially, it works really well to have the filmmakers be thinking about these simple little things that can be overlooked that actually do affect your viewing of a film.
For sure. And when people say, if people say it's going to affect how risky a film is, the thing is, I guarantee you any director worth his salt or her salt isn't going to be, or their salt, because this was directed by two people, isn't going to be...
or non-binary directors.
Yeah. Isn't going to be the ones that are deciding to go safe. That's the producers. So directors can try and critic-proof a film. That's fine because they're not the ones. Like it's a producer trying to critic-proof a film. That would be what you're worrying about then. Like you never hear of a director whenever like a film comes out that people say is too safe or bad or whatever. You often hear the director kind of quietly, lament that fact. And say that they tried to do... I mean, there's ones in the MCU that this has happened with,
Yeah, so. Thor: The Dark World is a classic example.
Or
Alan Taylor's said, whatever.
Age of Ultron, Joss Whedon's come out and talked about...
Yeah.
How he didn't like working with it. And Christopher Eccleston, I know he's not a director, but he's still one of the more passionate parts of making a movie would be the actor. So
that is Winter Soldier. Yeah, it deserves its praise, I would say.
Yes.
It's a very cool film. So, next we're up to Guardians of the Galaxy, which also came out in 2014.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
And it was directed by James Gunn.
James Gunn.
A gun for hire, if you will. So
chokes from laughing.
So, AJ, what is this film about?
Guardians of the Galaxy. All right, so this is what I've written down. I didn't just copy this one straight from Wikipedia because it didn't have enough information, I felt. So I added a little bit. See if you can work out the specific words I added. Don't do that. That sounds super tedious. Don't worry about it. Abducted from Earth at a young age, interstellar criminal Peter Quill forms an uneasy alliance with a group of extraterrestrial criminals, including Gamora, Rocket Raccoon, Groot, and Drax. That's all of them, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They join forces to go after a warlord named Ronan and stop him from using the unbridled power of a mysterious orb.
What's in that orb?
It's one of the stones. Which stone is it?
Power Stone.
There's just a power one?
Yeah.
What are the Infinity Stones? I don't know.
I'm going to write them down as I write them so I make sure I get all of them. So there's 6 Infinity Stones. You have got reality, mind, soul, time, power, and don't tell me.
I don't remember what you said.
Reality, mind, soul, time, power,
space.
The Tesseract.
After Ant-Man, can we talk about where the Infinity Stones are at this point in the story?
Yes, I do want to talk about it during Age of Ultron, actually.
Okay, cool. All right, so Guardians of the Galaxy. What do you think that has on Rotten Tomatoes, Richard? Just switch the host.
Oh my gosh.
Me.
I don't know. I'm guessing like 91.
Is it 91?
It is.
Wow.
I did it.
You did it. In my original Letterboxd ranking, I put Guardians of the Galaxy 10th. Another probably more controversial one.
Yeah, that is one of the ones that people... Because, as I mentioned, as I spoiled before on Letterboxd, sort of by average rating, it is second overall. Yeah. And so it was first up until, this time last year.
Wow. That's crazy.
I ranked it 8th.
Yeah, so...
And Rotten Tomatoes ranking, it's 7th.
Right. So I ranked it 10th originally, and now I've ranked it 5th. So behind Winter Soldier, which it wasn't. It used to be in front of Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm. Cool, yeah. So... This film, oh boy, what do we say about this film? Yeah. Marvel's first foray into the cosmic. James Gunn directed it, he beat out Peyton Reed and the duo of Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck.
They would later do
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
Peyton Reed would do Ant-Man.
Nice.
So it's interesting that they were just like, like it's a classic job interview thing. Like, do you mind if we hold on to your details? And it's like, oh yeah, sure, but you're never going to get a call. But sometimes you do.
Wow. Then let that be a lesson for podcasters everywhere. That's a very... I'm not going to explain that joke. That's something podcasters will get. Maybe other people won't.
Wait, is it?
I don't know, I'm just talking about trying to get guests, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
And there you go. I explained it. Yeah, so I've always had a very complicated relationship with Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn in general as well.
Yeah, because it's like you don't support pedophilia.
What? No, I don't. But neither does he, and I'll don't want to slander the man. He's done enough of that himself. But so one of my least favorite movies of all time, I acknowledge it's not a terribly made movie, but I hate it, is Super, directed by James Gunn, right?
Which is funny because you hate it because of its like genre or like tone change, but I've heard you say in the past that you love like tonal changes.
No, I hate tonal changes.
I swear you like them.
No, I hate them. I've told you, and you said I think I like them. That was how the conversation went.
Oh, okay.
No, I just think Super's a really depressing movie. But I really like Slither, which is a James Gunn movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen Slither, but I really like Super.
Well, you'll probably hate Slither then. So Guardians of the Galaxy, my problem with this movie was always that I love the characters. I think the characters are great, but the story isn't anything special. It's a very paint by numbers story, and I just always felt that by 2014, by the 10th Marvel film,
yeah, this is the 10th one.
You can't do stories anymore that are, we have to get Object X before the bad guy gets it, or else he'll have unlimited power. Like the most basic way of using a MacGuffin in your story. I was always very disappointed by that. But I will say that rewatching it now, I didn't really know what I never paid attention to the Infinity Stone storyline until like right before Avengers Infinity War. Like, I forgot they existed, and then everyone was talking about them, and I was like, well, okay. So I guess with the context of knowing that the orb is one of the Infinity Stones, it is a bit better now. I do see it as a bit more working towards a larger thing, I guess. And I also think it is... So this ranking that I've done, I've skewed it more to how do each of these pieces make up the whole, right? So I usually, unless it's really good and breaks those rules just because it's objectively a really good movie, I've ranked ones that build the better simpatico with the rest of them than ones that are good but individual movies. If I was building it as which is the best standalone movie, I think I would rank Guardians of the Galaxy higher than fifth.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Because I think it's a really good standalone movie. I think in terms of cinematography and just general filmmaking, it's one of the most inspiring entries in the MCU. There's a scene where all the Guardians are in jail, but like right when they first meet up, and they're talking about how they're going to escape. And while Rocket in the foreground is talking about how they need to get this battery from the central thing that's powering the prison, we see Groot in the background, who we haven't really explained who the characters are. I guess probably don't need to. Groot's a big tree man. While Rocket the Raccoon's explaining this, in the background, you see Groot reach up and pull the battery out just as Rocket's like, we need to do this part last, right?
Because we'll only have 30 seconds once you grab the battery.
Yeah. And watching that one shot of that happening, I was like, you don't get this kind of visual storytelling in the other Marvel. You don't get it in Russo films. You don't get it in the Thor films, So that's one thing I will give it credit for, and I know the diehards out there who love Guardians of the Galaxy will probably approve of me saying that it's, in terms of filmmaking, it might be the best MCU film. Like, in terms, just in terms of the craft itself, it's the most inspiring and thought out, and uses the visual medium of film a lot more than the others. In terms of story, I think that's where it still falls down, and in terms of how it creates a wider story, which is what the MCU is all about and what this podcast is about when talking about franchises, I don't think it is particularly special. And it's also why I always, in my original ranking, and we'll see if this changes, I always ranked Volume 2 above Guardians of the Galaxy, because Volume 2 was those same great characters in what I consider to be a better story.
Very cool.
Cool opinion, bro.
So this, understandably, was a very hard film to cast, because they really wanted to really kind of go out there. There was a lot of people read for the part of Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, including Joel Edgerton, Jack Houston, Jim Sturgis, Eddie Redmayne, Lee Pace, Aaron Paul, Logan Marshall Green, James Marsden, John Krasinski, Zachary Levi, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Michael Rosenbaum, John Gallagher Jr., and Glenn Howerton, Dennis from Always Sunny, who was James Gunn's second choice.
Yeah, I love hearing Glenn Howerton missing out on certain cast things, because he was almost
to Chris Pratt.
Yeah, he was almost Owen in Jurassic World. Is that right?
Yeah.
I remember when I found that out, just saying lines from Jurassic World in Glenn Howerton's Dennis voice. It's sort of like, they just made a new dinosaur. It depends what kind of dinosaur they cooked up in that lab. Just getting real neurotic and serial killer. Just saying Star-Lord lines. Be like, I'm Star-Lord. it's like the I haven't even begun to peak is like Star-Lord being like, I'm Star-Lord, man. It's like,
yeah.
It would have been a very different interpretation of the character. I don't know if I feel very bad for Glenn Howerton, because out of all the Always Sunny actors, I feel like he's the one who's branched out the least. And it seems like he wants to really bad.
He's classically trained, and as much as I would love to see his interpretation of the character, I'm glad that in the meme culture we live in that we didn't. I would hate to see you just have the same fucking unoriginal jokes on every Reddit thread
the
about
ones I
how
just
he's
made.
a 5-star man and he's a 5-star Lord man.
I don't think Glenn Howerton, completely based in the one role I'm most familiar with seeing him in, he is nowhere near as likable as Chris Pratt.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that's why they cast Chris Pratt. And there's potentially another good, in a Guardians sequel, another good character that he could play, Adam Warlock, but we'll get to that when we get to Phase 4. But yeah, he's... James Gunn was so impressed with Chris Pratt's audition that he was willing to CGI abs onto him, because he auditioned as just this schlubby fat guy from Parks and Rec, and he was like, he's so perfect. And Pratt was like, give me 6 months, I'll get in shape, and he got ripped as hell. This is also our first proper look at Thanos, this movie.
Yep.
With Josh Brolin.
Who's uncredited.
He's not in it very much. Sorry?
He's uncredited.
Interesting.
Because I was like, is Josh Brolin Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
And I
so
looked
it was
up.
like, we need to cast Thanos so we can get him in Guardians of the Galaxy. But yeah, speaking of other one, Isaiah Mustafa, Brian Patrick Wade, and Jason Momoa all read for Drax. And then also getting the voice right for Rocket. So Bradley Cooper plays him, doing kind of like a New Yorkish.
He doesn't sound like Bradley Cooper.
Yes, I think he does. I don't know. I can always hear Bradley Cooper.
I can hear. I can picture Bradley Cooper doing that voice, but
but he's not like.
It's not how he normally talks.
Yeah, they did kind of. I remember following this intently, trying to seeing who they would cast. Sharlto Copley, Jim Carrey, and Adam Sandler were kind of thrown around as doing fun voice, and then they looked at some voice actors as well. H. John Benjamin and Billy West. H. John Benjamin being Archer, Billy West being the voice of everyone. He does a lot of voices in Futurama.
I kind of really dig H. John Benjamin as Rocket.
The one that I most hoped they would cast was David Tennant. He was one of the front runners, because in the comics and in cartoons and stuff like that, up until Guardians of the Galaxy, the movie, Rocket was traditionally Scottish.
Huh.
And David Tennant, I love David Tennant.
What about Mike Myers then? What are you doing in my spaceship? I want my group, back group, back group, back want my group, back ribs.
There's another interesting thing as well. So this also has John C. Reilly in it. But it was reported that Hugh Laurie, Alan Rickman, and Ken Watanabe were all looked at for roles. However, they were looked at after like John C. Reilly and Ronan, the Lee Pace's Ronan, the accuser, were already cast. So they were probably in the running for Thanos.
Say those names again.
Hugh Laurie, Alan Rickman, and Ken Watanabe.
Very interesting. That's very interesting because it almost feels like, because had they cast Josh Brolin by the time he had his cameo in the end of Avengers?
No, there was Damien Poitier, Sidney Poitier's son, that played him in that.
Because I do think he looks kind of like Josh Brolin already at the end of Avengers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of those other actors do. Those are very interesting. So Hugh Laurie, Ken Watanabe, and who was the other one?
Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman is, I mean, but, oh, wow.
Yeah, imagine Alan Rickman as Thanos.
I can't. I don't think, it's weird saying Josh Brolin was the correct choice because I probably prefer all those actors over Josh Brolin. But yeah, I can't see any of them as Thanos.
Now, I've got a question for
you,
AJ.
And if I can't see them as Thanos, who else could?
I've got a question for you, AJ. Is Groot the most woke character in the MCU?
Tell me why. Give me your evidence.
There's a bit in the film where Rocket says to Groot, "Get him," referring to Quill, and he goes for Gamora. So Groot, as a species, might be genderless. Maybe he doesn't see gender. And I think that a lot more characters could strive to be like Groot.
Wow. Are you talking more on like the meta-contextual, like what we're talking about before, about the problem, the systematic problem that Marvel has with representation? Or are you talking about in the world of the film?
Both.
Because in the... If it was like, oh, they have a genderless character in Groot, but it would be nice if they didn't cast Macho Man Vin Diesel as this genderless character.
Yeah, fucking Vin Diesel. And Vin Diesel like recorded his lines on stilts.
Why?
Like he would get into the recording studio and have these like, so he'd be 10 foot tall and be able to feel what it's like to be Groot.
Is Vin Diesel the most the least cool actor to be cast in the most cool things? Because he was just cast in Avatar and like, it's like, this dude doesn't deserve, like, he almost gets the same kind of career as someone like Alan Tudyk, you know, like that nerd VIP. But it's like, it's fucking Vin Diesel. Like, I don't like Vin Diesel. He's the Iron Giant, one of the most like iconic nerd culture cartoon movies of all time, is Vin Diesel. Guardians of the Galaxy, Vin Diesel. Avatar's gonna have Vin Diesel. And it's like, this dude's a jock. This dude's Triple X and Fast and Furious. Stop putting him in my nerdy things. I'm being a gatekeeper.
Yeah, but he is a massive nerd. Like, he loves Dungeons and Dragons and shit.
Well, he's also kind of creepy in real life, so I don't know if I like Vin Diesel.
Yeah, just like a Dungeons and Dragons player.
That's true. Very true.
Do you know about the Easter egg?
Yeah. Do you want me to attempt to explain it?
Yes.
I know. So apparently, there's an Easter egg in Guardians of the Galaxy that no one's seen. Right? No one's discovered yet.
Yeah. That's it, really. People have accused James Gunn of it not actually existing, and then like some random fan was like, "It doesn't exist." And he's like, "I'll give you $10,000 if it doesn't exist." And it's like, well,
what does that mean?
I would have challenged you if it got
James Gunn, you also said you want to pee on children or something. So how are we supposed to like hold you accountable if you can't stick to what you're saying?
But yeah, like as recently as like last year, I was saying like reports that are like someone may have found the Easter egg, some obscure like
it's like a boring version of Ready Player One.
Yeah, but it's like how do you know no one's found it as well?
Yeah.
Like, it could have been reported, he didn't see the report, and then everyone's just like, oh, okay, well, it's not that because he didn't confirm it.
This should be something we start the Easter egg hunt and be like, okay, here's the intelligence we've gathered, you need to deny, like, don't tell us what it is, James Gunn, but is it one of the, like, don't tell us what it is if we haven't guessed it, I guess. That's really
But
interesting.
he has said that if it's not found, he'll reveal it one day. He said it won't be till after Guardians Volume 2. He said that several years ago.
Right.
So I mean,
So it
I don't
could
know
be
if we'll
any
ever
day
find
now.
out. Yeah, exactly. And apparently there's one in the second one as well.
Ugh.
I know, right? So one thing that's kind of like was confirmed during production for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but Groot sacrifices himself in this film. He creates a ball around the Guardians to take, a spaceship crash, to take the full brunt of it and protect them. And he dies, but Rocket grabs a twig of him, puts it into a pot, and grows a new Groot out of it. That is not a reincarnation of Groot. That's Groot's son. Just so that we're clear. Just want to clear that up. It's not like Groot did die.
It sounds like Word of God canon to me, Richard.
No, it is heavily, like, it's in the second one. There's no evidence that it's the same character.
There's evidence. You could argue it.
I mean, you could,
but
maybe
I
we
won't.
will when we get to the second one. But yeah, anyway, so it's like, he has to basically start from scratch. It's not just like, but in the comics, it is break off a twig, grow it. It's the same person. So that's hence the confusion, I think.
Okay. Sounds like you just gave me my best smoking gun for that argument I said I wasn't going to. Like, in our only other frame of reference for this species and this character, it's not this. But because someone said it is this in this version, it is that. I've always had a problem with Groot dying at that point in the film.
I don't like that he says "we are Groot" when he dies, because
you don't.
He can't say that.
Wow, very controversial. Yeah, I don't like the trope of a character who can't speak English or like Pokemon does it. Like, people understand Pikachu. Like Ash understands Pikachu. It's like, what do you mean you understand him?
Yeah,
it's that's not how language works. It's like you don't say I am Groot and you hear something else. Like my headcanon says that it's the inclination, like the tone of the way he's saying I am Groot, or the context of it, or something like that. But even then, that'd be a hard language to try and understand.
Yeah, they the other thing as well is that in the films they're all wearing universal translators, so they could be speaking all different languages, and because Quill knows English, we're hearing it through his voice. I've
been thinking about it a lot, that the universal translators seeing Captain Marvel, and I'm kind of perturbed by the idea that, like, we're not seeing the truest form then, because we're seeing their mouths shape these words, and apparently they're not saying that. That kind of like messes with my brain. But anyway, Groot dying, I don't have a problem with Groot dying as a concept, and I really like Baby Groot, so I'm glad that it got to that point. But I do think it's a shame they sacrificed Groot being part of the Guardians at the end, all holding hands to channel the energy of the orb, or the reality stone, because at the end of the film, the Power Stone, at the end of the film, to grab it away from Ronan, Star-Lord grabs the reality stone. No, what was it?
Power Stone.
Power Stone, sorry. And starts getting, like, destroyed, basically. And then everyone all the other Guardians hold his hand so that the power is dispersed evenly throughout them and they're able to survive. And it's so weird to put a unifying thing for, like, what you're really trying to push is your iconic new team, and not have one of the, like, the best member, some would say, as part of that. So I've always had a problem with that, because I don't necessarily think it should be reordered either, because it's quite an important place where that all happens. But I don't know, maybe they could have combined them into one thing, and maybe Groot has to sacrifice himself for the power to not be.
Yeah. Well,
you know
it's
what I mean?
because we see someone earlier on grab the Power Stone as well, and they just instantly explode. But Peter's able to hold on to it a little bit, because that hints at his being part Celestial.
Yes.
Which we find out in the sequel.
And yeah.
I do want to say one weird thing about this film. I read an article a couple years ago, 2016, it was about 3 years ago actually, that was the films with the highest body count of all time. So number 10, remember this was post 2016. Number 10 is The Avengers 2012 with 1,019 on-screen deaths. Number 9 is Braveheart with 1,297. Number 8 is The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies with 1,417. 7 is The Matrix Revolutions, 1,647. 6 is The Two Towers, 1,741. 300, Rise of an Empire comes in at 5th with 2,234. Return of the King in 4 with 2,798. The Sum of All Fears in 2002, 2,922. And the number 2 the highest body count in any film is Dracula Untold in 2014 with 5,687. And
I need to see Dracula Untold.
the highest body count of any film ever is Guardians of the Galaxy 2014 with 83,871 on-screen deaths. Now, I know what you're thinking, but at the end of knowing the entire planet dies, or in the original Star Wars, Alderaan gets exploded, in The Force Awakens, their whole,
multiple
planets get destroyed. But no, they rank much lower down. For some reason, Guardians of the Galaxy tallies in at exactly 83,871 on-screen deaths.
I thought you were going to have this really interesting thing about and these are where these deaths happen, but you're actually critiquing the article.
It's a stupid, why is this? How is Guardians of the Galaxy? Where'd you arrive at that exact number?
Yeah.
And it's such a weird...
Is there any...
Well, there's the scene where they do
anything?
this... Well, no, I mean, it's just trust us, this is how many people die in Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's like, if you
Sounds
say...
like Word of God canon to me, man.
Yeah,
But not even Word of God,
not even
Word
of
of
God,
Man canon.
Yeah, because James Gunn retweeted the article and was like, I guess my movies are all deadly or something like that. But it's such a weird, because I get...
What else did James Gunn tweet?
I get not including something like The Force Awakens, where you see 4 planets blow up, because...
Well, they're not on-screen deaths.
Yeah, exactly. So why is Guardians of the Galaxy? I get you see these massive pods explode, but there's so many scenes like that in so many movies.
And that wasn't 80,000 in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. It's a fucking weird number. Anyway.
All right.
I just wanted to complain about that.
I'm glad you did.
And so just before we move on, I do have a very randomly placed bit of trivia.
You are so random, dude. Seriously.
This is our second franchise, which features a film in which Bradley Cooper refers to a knapsack as a purse.
Is that intentional? Do you think that was a reference to The Hangover?
I don't know, but yeah, so that's that's that, because in The Hangover he calls Alan's knapsack a purse, and in this he calls the Star-Lord's a purse.
I have complained a bit about, I feel like the feeling is that I'm negative towards Guardians of the Galaxy. And I do want to just express that I think it's a very accessible film. It might be Marvel's most accessible film since Iron Man.
Yeah.
And so it's good. It's a good film. I think I just like others more than it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's very much like you could... I know a lot of people that aren't into the MCU that are like, oh, I'd quite like to see Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. All right, now it's time we move with us the best one.
Okay.
Avengers.
Here we are, Age of Ultron, although I did forget to mention also the arm loss in Guardians of the Galaxy. Gamora cuts off Groot's arms when they meet.
Yeah.
So there's another little fun fact for you. But yes, Age of Ultron, Avengers Age of Ultron even, 2015 came out, directed by Joss Whedon and AJ.
The Weeds.
What is this motherfucking film about?
I'll fucking tell you, motherfucker. All right. Avengers Age of Ultron, using the technology harnessed from Loki's staff, Tony Stark... Scepter. Sorry.
Yeah, just the people that work below him.
he brought his entire staff room into a new, he's like, all right, I'm going to give you better working conditions and I'll be able to harness your power because you'll be more motivated.
Yeah.
So, using the technology harnessed from Loki's scepter, Tony Stark, in an attempt to make a worldwide defense system against any more alien attacks, accidentally makes a super evil artificial intelligence robot named Ultron who wants to eradicate humanity as a means of restoring the Earth or protecting the Earth. It's vague. The Avengers all team up again to stop this from happening. Yep.
Yeah, cool. So, what do you reckon this has on Rotti Tomats?
The old Rotat.
Yeah.
This'll be 70.
75. It's the
There you
fourth
go.
lowest. So where did you rank this?
On my original ranking, I ranked it 20th out of 21. So
AJ?
between Thor and Thor: The Dark World.
I tell you what, mate. For once we agree on something, I've ranked it bloody 20th as well.
Well, we're about to disagree on something
Oh, okay.
because I've now ranked it 8th out of the 12 I have currently ranked.
Oh,
So
baby.
Age of Ultron for me is currently before the first Captain America, Thor: The Dark World, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor.
Interesting.
That's where I've ranked it. But to be honest, it's probably equal with Captain America.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what? I'll switch them round just because I know you like
Thank you,
Captain
thank
America.
It's,
How do I?
Letterboxd ranks
I'm
it-
switching them round, Richard. I'm doing it right now. I'm putting Captain America 1 above Avengers: Age of Ultron just because it's that's so arbitrary to me. And
and you know it would mean a lot to me.
where's the? All right,
So
whatever.
Letterboxd ranking by average rating, it is 16th out of 21. So yeah, it's not looked upon particularly favorably.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm not as cold on it as I originally thought I was is because going back into it, it is still charged and it is still like a tentpole moment in the MCU, you know? So I think for that alone, it was entertaining enough for me to want to rank it higher than I had originally placed it. Like, I can say I objectively enjoyed it more than the 2 Thor films and Incredible Hulk now. But not
Interesting.
as much as Captain America the First Avenger, of which it is now equal with.
You'll just change it every day so that they're more or less equal.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
this
like
is a
it's like Neptune and Pluto. Sometimes they change positions.
yeah, nice. They this was the first time I kind of remember being disappointed.
I agree.
I went to the midnight premiere, and I remember afterwards just kind of being like, I probably would have just preferred being well rested, because I had an early morning the next day. I was like I was starting a new job. I was only a couple months into a new job, and it was like my first like big shoot, and I had to be out early, and you know I wasn't going to not go to the midnight premiere of the new Avengers film. But then, yeah, it's kind of just like, I didn't love it. And this was still, and I'm still at this point, where I refuse to admit that I don't like any of these films. You know, like I kind of refuse to see their flaws a lot of the time. But yeah, I was kind of, because I remember thinking there was no way this could be bad, you know? It had everything going for it.
I
Whedon was
really
back
liked
and-
that original trailer that dropped for it.
Yeah, I remember it like leaked online.
It incorporated the Pinocchio song
Yeah.
into it, which is one of the first examples of a slowed down,
Yeah.
or at least a juxtaposing creepy, like innocent song in a creepy setting. I thought that was awesome, and I thought the look of Ultron and his voice and everything in that trailer was really cool.
Yeah. But that was funny as well. That trailer was meant to. They were like, "Oh, it's going to premiere during the last air break of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. one night," and then it leaked online in like low quality. So like 2 hours later, Marvel was like, "Here it is in high quality," and they were like, "Damn Hydra." They blamed Hydra for the leak, so that was quite cool.
That's cool.
So yeah, you say you like James Spader's voice and his look. It was James Spader.
Yeah,
Did I say
plays
James
Ultron.
Spader or did I say Ultron? I feel like I said James Spader twice.
You said James Spader twice.
Okay. Yeah, you like Ultron's voice and look, and it's James Spader.
Yeah.
And he was apparently Whedon's only choice. And
Okay.
he was just supposed to do the voice, but then he was like, no, I want to do the physicality, so he did motion capture as well.
He Andy Serkised it.
He did. This
yeah,
film
okay.
also features Andy Serkis. And
So-
he helped him out. He helped out the peeps.
Yeah. So in terms of like a follow-up to the first Avengers movie, it doesn't really hold a candle. I don't like it. Just got me on board with a lot of the characters outside of Iron Man, and then introduces like Scarlet Witch and Vision. Both of them, I'm whatever on. At
And
least of what
Quicksilver.
we've seen
Can't
of them.
forget Quicksilver, mate.
Yeah, well, he dies in this film. So,
Spoilers.
what is wrong with this movie? Have we
Okay.
told it? Have we explained enough of what it's about? I think we have.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So this film is very messy. And Joss Whedon left the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was set to direct like Infinity War, or I don't know if he was like officially signed on, but it was like, you know, he's doing it kind of thing. And then he got so burnt out, he retired from all social media. I don't know if he's directed a film since. He's been in talks for a couple. Oh, he did the latter half of production for Justice League. But I don't think he's directed it.
What a jump from Avengers 2 to the half of Justice League.
And yeah, it's very messy. A lot of it just exists to like set things up. It feels like the midway point and between a lot of things.
This is the Iron Man 2 of Phase 2.
Yeah, hard out. So Joss Whedon said like it's impossible to balance that many characters kind of thing, which is one of the things I think Infinity War does really well, is balances all of those characters, and there's even more, and they're way more different like tones and worlds to combine.
I don't know if I would agree that Infinity War balances characters very well. But
okay,
we can
talk about that when we get to that, because
when I remind myself of the film.
Disagree with you.
But he did that with the Avengers. How many more characters are in Avengers Age of Ultron?
2, I guess. I don't know.
2? 3?
Yeah. It's just, there's a lot of like half-baked ideas as well. Like you have, what do they need? Then they need to work on someone, and so they're like, oh, call Helen Cho. And it's like, oh, yeah, get her in. And it's like, we're supposed to know who this is.
Right.
And then we've never heard of her before. We never hear of her again. But she's like quite an important character in this film.
Yeah.
It's such a strange, like half-baked idea.
Well, do we want to talk about how this, like, I don't want to steal your line, but you messaged me.
Yeah, like, to me, it kind of feels like Joss Whedon didn't even watch Phase 2.
Yeah. And I remember reading a quote after Iron Man 3 came out where Joss Whedon was like, now what am I going to do with Avengers 2? And I guess the answer was pretend Iron Man 3 didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I think what gutted me about this movie being bad, and so Cult Popture extends back to before Age of Ultron came out, right, as a YouTube channel and stuff. And if you go and watch one of our very early videos, we pull out this quote from Joss Whedon talking about Avengers Age of Ultron before it had come out. And that quote, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, in terms of what to do with a sequel, you don't go bigger, you go deeper. You want to make these characters bleed, you want to dig into them, and when I say dig, I mean with a scalpel, basically, with something like that. Yeah. And the idea was like against the idea that a sequel needs to match in scale something like the Chitauri invasion, and instead it should be a deeper story, which I think is a wonderful philosophy for developing a sequel. And I can definitely see in something like Ultron being a smaller villain, I guess not smaller than Loki, but like you know, more contained. I can definitely see remnants of that, and you get something like, there's a huge scene in this where they learn about Hawkeye's family, and he lives on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and I can see all that being deeper. I can see a lot of this being deeper, but yeah, he blatantly ignores the end of Iron Man 3. Yeah. But I do think there are remnants of what could have been not ignoring Iron Man 3, and a missed opportunity, if you will, that I'll go into now, from Iron Man 3. So if Iron Man 3 ends with him being like, I'm giving up because I'd rather be with Pepper, and I'd rather, you know, like, so the PTSD that Tony suffers in Iron Man 3 seemingly is cured, or he gets over it, or he moves on by retiring as Iron Man. That's kind of the answer, the solution to the character arc, is like he goes beyond needing to be Iron Man to feel responsibility for the rest of the world. And I think there was an opportunity, if you wanted to give Tony Stark more screen time in Age of Ultron, which maybe you don't, because he does. He is
on screen for 45 minutes and 34 seconds.
There you go. That's a weird thing to immediately pull out, but well done. I do think that there could have been some setup, and it, you know, maybe it happened and we just didn't see it, where Tony Stark, after seeing everything that happens after Iron Man 3, and I guess still reeling from the events of the Avengers or whatever, is like, I don't want to be Iron Man anymore, but I do want to keep the world safe, and that with great power comes great responsibility. It is my purpose, it is my responsibility to keep the world safe. And so if creating Ultron was not only an attempt to because he talks about having a shield around the whole world, but it's also an attempt to make himself as Iron Man not needed. But then that goes wrong because Ultron becomes evil and Iron Man, he has to become Iron Man again. To me, that's a very intriguing way of bringing back a character you'd just written out.
Yeah.
Even when I wasn't as aware or into the MCU as I am now, I remember Age of Ultron starting and Iron Man's just there and me being like, didn't he retire at the end of Iron Man 3? And they just don't really explain. I think that's a real shame.
Yeah, because one of the big problems that I was thinking going into Age of Ultron was like how they're going to get the team back together, because Tony's retired, Shield's down, and like Cap didn't call them during that. Thor didn't call them during the attack on London. But it's like those things, happened quite fast, understandable. What is it? What's going to be the event that gets them back together? Why are they going to be convinced to get back together? And it's just, the movie starts and they're just getting Loki's scepter. And they apparently put the whole team together to do it. And it's like he didn't even fucking watch the end of event. Like, their first Avengers ends with them going their separate ways, but kind of with the implication that they will come back together if need be. And so Iron Man 3 completely ignores the ending of it. There's a quick reference. You see Sam at the start of it, and Sam Falcon, and it's like, Joss Whedon was told, we've introduced a new character, and he's like, sweet, I won't worry about it. And then, Anthony Mackie's like a charisma machine, and is missing from this film, I think. And then, so they just chucked in a quick line where it's like, doing our missing persons case, but, because he's looking for Bucky. But they don't even mention Bucky by name, because Joss Whedon just got told, I need to write him out of the movie somehow, but couldn't be bothered watching the film to find out who he was talking about. The Guardians aren't in it at all. Thor comes back to Earth at the end in the post-credit scene of The Dark World, and makes out with Jane, who's not mentioned at all in this film.
And never seen again in the MCU.
Yeah. And one of the things she was mentioned in Ragnarok, to be fair. Oh, okay. But one of the things I really liked in the first Avengers is that there's a quick scene of Thor checking up on Jane. Like, Coulson's showing Thor, like, here she is, this is what she's doing. Because he's only on Earth to stop Loki and doesn't have time to, stop in to see his girlfriend. And there's just so many things like that missing, with these little connecting threads. And so many of them could just be a line of dialogue.
Yeah. And
he just decided not to.
And that's the crux of what's wrong with this film, I guess. Like, I guess the other thing people point to with what's wrong with it is Ultron being kind of a lame villain. And I'm of two minds about this, because I like Ultron's look. As I say, I like his look. I think James Spader gives a really cool performance as him. It's very menacing. But at the same time, and recently I made a video about sympathetic characters. It's about Patty Jenkins and sympathetic characters. And in it, I'm talking about the Marvel's like villain problem. And I referred to Ultron's plan as the pumpkin spice latte of, AI, evil AI villains, because it's the most generic, the only way to save humanity is to destroy it kind of thing, which is like, we saw that in iRobot, man. What are we doing? Yeah. And so I like the performance, but I don't like the character.
Yeah, 100%. And one of my biggest issues coming out of Age of Ultron is that every character is the funny one in this one. Every character is quippy, and it's a very Whedon thing. Yeah. But like every single character has their little like smart aleck lines that normally would only get from Tony, and then and then it keeps on going further and further. By the time we get to like something like Ragnarok or even Infinity War, Thor's like the comic relief, the character who's like takes himself super seriously is now like the funny one.
Right, so you don't like the ramifications of
Well,
Whedonism.
just the fact that like this is again when you're complaining about the MCU, this is what you're complaining about.
Yeah.
Is that, and it started with this film. This is again, it's super messy. It only exists to serve the wider universe. Doesn't take itself seriously enough, and the films shouldn't take themselves too seriously, but it goes too far in the other direction, I think.
Yeah, you know what? I'm comfortable now with it sitting behind Captain America.
Yeah.
Captain America is if Captain America is the minimum, then this is below the minimum.
Yeah. And it's and that was another big problem with Ultron is that he's a bit goofy. You know, he forgets words like children. And it's like I
kind of like Ultron's goofiness though.
Yeah, it's okay, and one of the issues was that we were promised something else.
He is half Stark.
You know, he is partly influenced by Tony Stark, but we were promised something else in the trailer. It's like I get expectations and stuff like that, but still, when every character in the film is cracking jokes, I'd like the villain to take himself seriously.
I have a fun piece of trivia about this film.
I would love to hear it.
Andy Serkis's character gets his arm cut off, as reference to The Empire Strikes Back.
Very cool.
Very good.
Do you want to know another fun piece of trivia?
What?
This is the only movie in the MCU where Thor appears but Loki doesn't.
Oh, true. That's why it's bad. What do you think of the Bruce Banner Black Widow love story?
Hate it.
You hate it?
Yeah, totally. It's
I think it facilitates an interesting exploration of both those characters.
Yeah, kind of, but it's also like you've got this badass female character. It's like, actually, do you know what would be even better? If she only existed to be in a love story. And then also have her whole this character's exterior break down because she can't give birth, which is funny because Scarlett Johansson was pregnant while filming that scene about how she can't give birth.
Oh, that was me. Sorry, I was adding to the joke, not making fun of you.
Really feels like you made fun of me there.
Yeah, I know it doesn't feel like that.
It's just like, taking...
It's funny because the infertile character was actually pregnant. It's such a dark thing to find funny. I think that's where my angle was coming. We're 2.5 hours in. My jokes aren't clear enough at this stage.
But yeah, I don't know, reducing Nat to that is it feels a little bit dishonest. And Joss Whedon doing the classic grabbing someone, that someone falls and they land on their breasts, and he used the exact same joke in Justice League.
Oh yeah.
With the way Flash does it and then quickly zips away. To
be fair, that happens all the time. I'm constantly falling on people's breasts.
Also, the whole conversation they have about how Banner's I'm literally turned into a green rage monster and don't have control over who I murder. And Black Widow's yeah, I can't have babies. We're both the same.
Don't try understand the female experience, Richard.
I know. But it's it doesn't really feel the same. You're not one
of them
it's
not the same.
Is a literal monster, and she's yeah, I'm a monster too because I'm infertile.
But that's also kind of what if you're a woman watching the Avengers Age of Ultron and you can't have babies, and it's this real sad, tragic thing in your life, and then one of the characters refers to her infertility as something that makes her a monster.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a dark kind of
because Whedon's famously writes amazing female characters, and it's he had this badass female character and now she's a love interest.
Yeah.
And so I was just pointed that. Plus, it also just comes out of nowhere. Again, it's you have a little bit of flirtation between Cap and Natasha. Actually, that's kind of one of the things that is referenced in the film because Cap sees Banner and Black Widow flirting, and he's like, "Hey, I've seen her flirt up close. This is more." And he's like, Banner's like, "Haha, yeah." Wait, what do you mean up close? And that is the best. That and one other scene are the two best scenes of the film. The house party scene, we were just seeing them chill out together.
Yeah,
that's such a great scene. I love that.
That's the best scene in the film.
Yeah, it's that. and I am kind of disappointed that I don't think we're ever going to see that again. We've just got in the middle of this kind of less than good movie, we've got the Avengers kind of letting their hair down and just having fun with each other. There's not going to be any time for that in Endgame, I'm presuming. There wasn't really any time for it.
That's why it's
Infinity
3
War.
hours.
Yeah, because they're just chilling out for half the time. But
It turns into game night for a bit.
but yeah, the whole thing with they're all trying to lift Thor's hammer, but only the worthy can wield it, and
a great concept.
Nudges it a little bit, and that's great. It's a great dynamic. And then later on, when Vision is created, he lifts it no problem, and it's such a great payoff to that joke, and also immediately gets you on board with Vision as a character.
Do you remember, like 2 years ago? We were both living in Auckland, and I was at work. I remember, and I think maybe like a trailer for Infinity War had just come out or something like that. Like Avengers was very much, a big part of the public consciousness or something like that. And I remember messaging you and being like, I've never really bought into Vision being created. Like I think it's weird that Tony Stark's AI voice becomes a main character, and like that they were able to make a human-esque body. Do you remember me talking to you about that?
No.
You had no time for it. You were like, fuck off, it's perfect. And I was like, I can't really explain what I'm meaning here. But again, and recontextualized with understanding that the Mind Stone, which is inside the scepter, is what creates that humanity for both Vision and Ultron. I think that actually solves my problem, because
cool.
I think what I was coming from.
I'm glad this argument I don't remember is
yeah.
come to
No,
a close.
my point was like, I don't buy that humans could create a technology that's powerful enough to give an AI butler a human form, but knowing that it's actually magical or whatever, I think I'm a bit more inclined to get behind the idea now.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about the Infinity Stones, because this film does very heavily tease Infinity War. You have Thor go off on a little side mission where he goes to the pool of vision or whatever, and he sees a vision of Ragnarok, which is a very different vision from what we got. But it has the 6 Infinity Stones. He learns about the Infinity Stones, and he's like, I'm off to go find them. So where were we at the time? So I'm going to scour the universe for all of the Infinity Stones. So reality is currently, he knew about that one. That was in Thor: The Dark World. So we can tick that one off. The Mind Stone.
Where is reality?
Reality, the ether. And they gave it to the Collector in the post-credit scene of Thor: The Dark World, but he knew about that one kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Mind Stone, again, he knows about. Soul is... Yep, Soul's pretty well hidden.
And the Mind Stone was in the Scepter.
In the Scepter, and now it's in Vision's forehead. Yeah, the Soul Stone was in Nevada Lair, and that's pretty well hidden. So, the Time Stone...
Sorry?
Nevada Lair.
Where's that?
Is it Nevada Lair? It's where it is in Infinity War with Red Skull.
Oh, so the Soul Stone was in the Tesseract.
No, that's the Space Stone.
So is the Soul Stone in? Sorry, you need to explain this to me. So it's in Captain America.
The Soul Stone is the one that you have to that he sacrifices Gamora in Infinity War to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's miles away. So fair enough.
Oh, so we haven't seen it yet.
We don't see that one yet. The Time Stone is just on Earth. The Power Stone is near to the Reality Stone, and then the Space Stone was there the whole fucking time. And it's like, I'm off to scour the universe to find all 6. And it's like 3 of them are in your backyard. Like, I wouldn't be surprised because the Soul Stone, no one found it for 8. No one knew where it was. It's probably in Thor's pocket. It's probably with his car keys because he's so bad at fucking knowing where they are.
So the Space Stone is in the Tesseract.
Yes.
And the Tesseract is currently on Asgard.
Yes.
And the go back down the list.
The Power Stone is with the Nova Corps because the Guardians gave it to them at the end.
Yeah, and that's from the Orb from Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. Okay.
The Time Stone is Doctor Strange is yet to be given it, but it's on Earth.
Okay, but we don't know that at this point in the story.
It's in the Eye of Agamotto. Soul Stone, is hidden. You have to sacrifice something. Mind Stone's in Vision's forehead. Reality is with the Collector.
There you go. Cool. That's really helpful for me because, as I said already, like going into these movies, or at least having only seen them once leading into Infinity War, I didn't even remember the story thread of the Infinity Stones throughout the previous movies. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
No,
All
fair
right,
enough.
cool.
So Joss Whedon, for as much as he did with this film, he wanted to do even more. He wanted the pool of light scene to be long. He wanted that whole thread to be longer, and they shot more of it. And the studio was like, "Yeah, no, cool, add that in, but you have to get rid of the stuff at Hawkeye's farm." And then he was like, "I'm going to keep that stuff." So that's why that's kind of half baked, that storyline. And then
he was like, "No, the scene between Black Widow and Bruce Banner is imperative. It needs to be there at the farm."
He wanted to include Spider-Man and Captain Marvel in the film. But they hadn't cast an actress yet, so they would have taken a while to get confirmed. And the Sony deal wasn't fully finalized, kind of thing.
I thought the Sony deal wasn't finalized till ages after.
No, well, 2 films later, like a year later, is Civil War,
true, yeah.
that he's in, and it was announced. A lot of people thought Spider-Man would show up in Age of Ultron, or at least in the post-credit scene, because it was like announced end of 2014,
right?
I believe, and then he first appears start of 2016.
Man, as much as I like the first Avengers movie, Joss Whedon just sounds like an idiot dealing with the second one. Like, why do you want to put more, like, huge characters in your film that doesn't need all the ones they've got already? Like, you had to invent something for Black Widow and Bruce Banner to be relevant. Well, even Hulk has a good moment. I think that whole thing was just created so that you can get Hulk off-world.
Yeah, but you know what's actually interesting is that, so he ends up not off-world. He goes on the ship and disappears, and they deliberately kept it on Earth because they didn't want people to falsely think they were doing Planet Hulk. And then the next time we see Hulk, it's in the middle of Planet Hulk.
Yeah. Apparently Ragnarok isn't as Planet Hulky as people wanted it to be, though.
Yeah. But it's, borrows from it. But, so much that he wanted Spider-Man and Captain Marvel to be in the film that when Scarlet Witch flies in at the end, when they have like the new Avengers, the plates, you shoot plates for a CGI scenes where you like a blank version of what you need, and then you shoot the actors and green screen it, whatever. The plates for that scene were actually shot for a Captain Marvel cameo.
Wow.
And then they were just reused.
Wow.
So it's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad, like, we didn't get Captain Marvel just brought in like that, because it would have just been like, oh, well, no, here's another character that we have to deal with now. Another couple of little fun things about this film. It's the first MCU film with no Oscar winners in it, but it has got 6 nominees.
There you go.
What else? Oh yeah, so I talked a little bit in the last episode about Joss Whedon's sneaking a dirty joke in there when he talks about Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson being a mewling quim, which has a very R-rated, modern translation. In this one, when they're all trying to lift the hammer, Tony says something about that as ruler of Asgard, he'll be reinstating Prima Nocta, which is the law of the land, I guess, that a lord can claim the first night of a marriage to have sexual relations with the bride. So it's basically a king saying, when you get married, I get the first sex with your bride, whether you like it or not, whether she likes it or not. So that's a pretty dark joke from Tony Stark, saying that he's going to rape every one of the land's wives.
I think it's coming from a more...
it's a more light-hearted place.
He's being a cuck.
Yeah. But it is very... well, he's not being a cuck, he's being a bull. He's trying to cuck every man in the land.
Is that the... Right. Yep.
Yeah, the cuck is the victim, or the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a cuck, I'm well aware of.
And as a bull. Also, apparently, Abomination from Hulk was in here at one point.
Where would he have been?
Who knows? He just loves chucking shit in anywhere they
That's
they
the
fit
most
or
intriguing one, though, because of how put on the back foot Incredible Hulk is with the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, well, they could have
really
just brought back, like the fight at the start could have had Abomination in it.
Right.
Like, he could have just been working for Baron von Strucker.
The most cartoonish villain to be in this comic book series.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, hey, if this... If Phase 2 made kind of like sense in terms of how it wanted to balance its grandiose, surely that would be the end of Phase 2, right? Surely there wouldn't be another film.
But they did. So we got Ant-Man 2015, directed by Peyton Reed. Now, it might seem very strange to have this film after Age of Ultron, but I think it makes a lot of sense to have Civil War be the start of Phase 3, you know?
Yes.
Like, it's more about making Civil War start Phase 3 than having Ant-Man end Phase 2.
Yes, I guess the perfect way to do it would have had Ant-Man earlier.
Yeah. But then it would make no sense for him not to be in Age of Ultron.
You put Ant-Man before Guardians of the Galaxy, and... whatever. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Don't worry. Just keep going.
So it's directed by Peyton Reed. What do you reckon this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
70.
92.
That's real high.
It's the 13th highest.
Wow.
So it still ranks pretty, yeah.
In my original ranking, I've ranked it 17th out of 21. And in my new ranking, I've ranked it 7 out of 12. So it is behind Avengers, Iron Man 3, Captain America Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Iron Man 2, and it is in front of Captain America the First Avenger, Avengers Age of Ultron, Thor the Dark World, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor.
Cool. So interestingly, Rotten Tomatoes ranks this 13th. If you sort Letterboxd by, rating, it's 13th, and I put it 13th.
Well, you're just a bloody bundle of idiosyncrasies, aren't you?
I am. So, what is Ant-Man about?
Oh, yeah, I've written this down. All right, Scott Lang... this is the one I edited the most outside of Iron Man 3, because Wikipedia didn't do enough. Scott Lang is a recent ex-con with a heart of gold. Wanting to get his life back on track and be a bigger part of his daughter's life, Lang winds up getting recruited by Hank Pym, an old washed-up scientist who created and operated a weaponized shrinking suit during the war. I don't remember what war. The war. Lang dons the suit and becomes Ant-Man, and he and his team plot a heist with worldwide ramifications. That part is from Wikipedia.
Nice. Very cool. And who's the villain in it?
The villain is Yellow Jacket.
Correct.
Played by Sean Evans from Hot Ones.
Yeah.
Or a buff version of Sean Evans from Hot Ones.
Corey Stoll from House of Cards.
Right.
So, this has a very famous piece of behind-the-scenes trivia, which I don't know how fucking important it is for us to dwell on. Edgar Wright was attached to direct this from 2003. He pitched this to Marvel.
This is such a big talking point.
I know. It's like, we're so far into it. It's like, here's the big thing you have to talk about when you talk about Ant-Man. So Edgar Wright was attached since 2003. That's when he proposed the film to Marvel. He worked on it for a long time, wanted it to be standalone. His only statement about leaving Marvel, getting, mutual kind of leaving from Marvel, was he said, I wanted to make a Marvel film, but Marvel didn't want to make an Edgar Wright film. He has said when he was promoting Baby Driver, he said he never watched the finished film. He said that would be like me asking you, do you want to watch me have sex with your ex-girlfriend? And so, yeah, he hasn't seen it.
Pretty sad. And I do think it's fuck, I hate doing? I hate saying hot takes on this podcast that just what every fucking person says.
Yeah.
But my hot
take...
take...
what? I fucking hate Edgar Wright. Peyton Reed's a better director.
I think, Ant-Man would have been better if Edgar Wright directed it. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Of course it would have been.
Yeah, of course. I think Peyton Reed had an unenviable task of taking this film on. No one wanted to do it. He said... he's been in talks for a few projects in Marvel. He's a massive Marvel fan. He's the one who he pitched doing Fantastic Four in the 60s. And now everyone's like, when they do Fantastic in the 60s?
They should do Fantastic Four in the 60s.
I know, but you've read that idea because Peyton Reed pitched it. Kind of thing.
Yeah, Peyton Reed's a great director.
He's better than Edgar Wright, that's for sure.
He did the Back to the Future animated series, which we covered on an episode of our Patreon show. So go check that out at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
He also directed Bring It On.
I am getting the mental equivalent of trench foot doing this podcast for this long.
So, yeah. Where was I going with that? Anyway, I think he did a perfectly fine job. I really like this film. I think it's fun. Paul Rudd is fantastic as he always is. Happy 50th birthday for the other week, Paul. You bloody handsome man. You look fantastic. Of course, he wasn't the only person in running for the role because, of course, he isn't.
The other people.
Adrian Brody, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Ewan McGregor were in the running for Scott Lang.
Nah.
It originally featured Hank Pym as the main Ant-Man.
Say that again.
Hank Pym was the original, in the original versions of the script was focused on him because he's the Ant-Man everyone knows. He created Ultron, actually, in the comics. But he beats his girlfriend, so he was sidelined.
He beats his girlfriend.
Yeah, it's Hank Pym in the comics beats his girlfriend.
Just don't include that in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
I actually like that Hank Pym. I like because you get stuck in that thought process of like, it's weird that Iron Man was the first superhero and then they all, that broke the seal and then a whole bunch more came out. I do like things like Captain America, First Avenger, and Captain Marvel, and even Hank Pym's role in Ant-Man, where it's like, no, superheroes have existed for a wee while. This is just the place we're starting our story.
Yeah.
So I do like that.
It's funny because we do see a flashback. We've got it's like 3 different ways of doing something. So we've got a digitally de-aged Michael Douglas, and he actually looks quite good, I thought, because it's quite quick, and that was kind of the first ones where it's like, oh, that actually looks pretty decent. But over the case of 40 or so years since Captain America, the First Avenger, Dominic Cooper has turned into John Slattery.
Oh, it's the worst car. They look so different.
And Hayley Atwell has turned into Hayley Atwell, but with some grey in her hair and some wrinkles around her eyes.
She looks so bad. She doesn't look... it's so weird, man. It's so weird because, and we also see Hayley Atwell. We see Peggy Carter in The Winter Soldier as an old lady. And it's like, that's 30 years after the scene in Ant-Man. She changed so much in 30 years.
Yeah.
And there's also the other guy in that room who is also de-aged. And I can't get behind de-aging. We'll probably talk about this more with the next phase. I think de-aging looks terrible, and I don't think it looks any better here.
Sweet.
You've hurt my feelings, AJ, and I'm not gonna...
What else? Can you name the arm loss in this film?
No. Can you?
Yep. When Yellow Jacket is at the end shrinking, different parts of his body are shrinking uncontrollably. His arm shrinks before the rest of his body, and destroys his arm.
Who did you call you called Malekith the worst villain in the MCU? I think Yellow Jacket is just inches in as the second worst one.
Yeah, I mean that still makes my statement correct.
Yeah, I know. I'm putting it next to it because I'm saying this is he's so boring. He's a bald white dude. Oh my god, at least cast a bald person of color. At least do something to make this character not the most generic and poorly thought out looking person. He's so boring. Yellow Jacket as a concept is cool though, and I guess that's why I think he beats Malekith, is because he's more vaguely interesting. But he's just evil Ant-Man.
Yeah. It's the villain with the same powers.
Yeah.
It's without focusing on the Edgar Wright thing. There's not a lot to say about that, man.
What I will say about, and can this be the last thing we say about it?
Well, we're talking about this for a third of the time we've talked about every other film.
But it's Ant-Man. It's the small one.
Hey, very nice.
There you go.
Let's move on.
I should like this film more than I do. I think Ant-Man's power, the shrinking stuff, I think that is my favorite concept in the MCU, my favorite power that any of the superheroes have. I think it's super interesting. I think there's a lot of places to go with that, but there's just something about this film that makes it boring and generic to me now. When I first saw it, I was like, yeah, this is my favorite MCU property under Iron Man and the Avengers. And now I'm like, nah, not anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp kind of, sullied that a little bit as well. But, there is a lot I really like about Ant-Man. And I like the way it ties into the greater universe. I love that Hank Pym hates Tony Stark, or how he hates the Starks.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And that what else? Oh, yeah, that we see Falcon in it as well.
Yeah.
That he's in this more than he's in the last Avengers film.
Yeah. Cool. Well, look, a little bit of a spoiler. I will be talking about Ant-Man in one of our further segments after what are we doing next.
All right, well, here we are in the intermission. So we asked you guys on Facebook and Instagram, just two forms of social media there, what your favourite moments from Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are. Now, we got scores of replies. I'll only be able to read a few here. But we got hundreds and hundreds of replies. So let's look on Instagram first. We got My Vincent Academia said, Hawkeye's speech to Scarlet Witch is a moment that doesn't get enough credit. It's a real heroic moment where he acknowledges that he is the odd one of the team, but still he feels he has a responsibility to go out there and do his job. It's a real awakening for Wanda coming from a very unlikely source. Really redeems Clint from him being brainwashed for the first Avengers movie. It's a good answer.
It's an interesting point. Yeah. I think I did want to talk about this, but I forgot it in the like throes of all the other stuff we were talking about.
In the throes of passion.
I think What I think something else that I quite like about the Avengers is how this is the first Avengers film, but it's related to what My Vincent Academia has said, which is that it's cool that if you actually pay attention to the story, Black Widow and Hawkeye aren't like recruited Avengers because they're obviously the least powered characters, and I think it'd be easy to be like, oh, why are they on the team? They're just normal people with like slightly heightened skill levels and very specific skills. But it's actually that they're more employees of S.H.I.E.L.D. that, in the first Avengers anyway, just get like wind up, roped into the Battle of New York, you know?
And
so it's
like,
less about...
Here we go again. And next, you've been blunderstruck with this comment from Blunderstruck. The soundtrack of Guardians of the Galaxy and the various moments that it played throughout the film. Yeah, I mean, it sort of, I don't know, invented like a genre of film almost, where it's like everyone's trying to do now. We talked about it a little bit. But yeah, it's so like everyone wants to imitate this now, but there's something about the way it's used in Guardians of the Galaxy that really works, and the sequel as well.
Yeah.
So, heading over to The Face. Scott Curry said, Winter Soldier, after Cap broadcasts his speech telling S.H.I.E.L.D. that Hydra has infiltrated their ranks, I love the sequence of scenes where Captain's orders becomes a sort of impromptu rallying call for all the loyal agents.
Yeah, that's an awesome comment. I really like that as well. Yep.
Yeah, how the guy refuses to do it. He's like, sorry, Captain's orders.
I put myself in those shoes. I was like, I'm the guy who doesn't want to do the thing, but I'm so scared of being killed that I'd probably do it in real life. I'd be too scared of getting shot by the Hydra dude.
Joel Tempero has posted a GIF comment of the moment where Vision hands Thor his hammer, which is a fantastic moment. I love that moment. And I remember that being my favourite moment in Age of Ultron, specifically. When I saw that in cinema, I was like, "Pwah!"
Nice.
So Ned Gilmore writes, can I vote for the entire Nowhere sequence in Guardians of the Galaxy? Because that whole bit is pretty much movie perfection for me. No, you can't, Ned. Sorry. So two people here, Clayton Haku and Tim Overton, also said this, the before we begin, does anyone want to get out moment in Captain America the Winter Soldier, the elevator fight scene.
Yeah, I'm calling that's the most iconic part of Phase 2, I reckon. That's the, like, if you had to pick one moment from each phase that defined the phase, I reckon that's Phase 2's moment.
Or, yeah, that and maybe something from Guardians of the Galaxy as well, because Phase 2 being when it really, you know, expanded the universe.
Yeah.
Liam Magurin says, the final fight scene in Ant-Man, its inventiveness and smaller scale was the perfect breather from the last couple of films that ended in formulaic and world-destroying climaxes. 100% agree. This was my favourite part about Ant-Man as well.
Yeah, agreed.
It's not every film has to have world-ending stakes, and I think this is like, again, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, they kind of decided they did that again because both Ant-Man films kind of came out as like a little breather after one of the big event films.
Yeah.
Which is a nice little place to slot.
It would have been cool if Ant-Man and the Wasp replicated the ending of the first Ant-Man, but he's Giant Man, and so it's like a real train.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all we've got here.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening at home, bloody, what are your favourite MCU Phase 2 moments, and why didn't you comment them?
Yep.
Interestingly, no one said anything from Thor: The Dark World or Iron Man 3.
But Iron Man 3
Interesting.
is one that I can vouch for, so it's all good.
Okay. We're going to be talking about titles on this podcast.
Okay.
So, main things I want to talk about, obviously, let's go back through them. Ant-Man, what do you think of it as a title?
Surely we don't need to.
The main ones I want to talk about, Avengers: Age of Ultron. So the comic book that is, the comic book named Age of Ultron it's not an adaptation of that at all. Also, the Age of Ultron is about 2, maybe 3 days.
Yeah, I think the Age of Ultron is the threat, is the looming threat they're trying to stop.
Yeah, I get that. But apparently they tried a few different of Ultrons, but Age worked best, and they just said, people will forgive us for it.
Do you have any of them?
No, that's just literally the quote from Kevin Feige is, we tried a few of Ultrons.
Rise of Ultron.
Yeah, just what Dawn of Ultron, some of those boring ones. But also, I do want to get your thoughts on Iron Man 3. The credits say Iron Man THREE.
Hate it. Why? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you spelling out the word 3? So weird.
Also, some dumb IMDb trivia.
One thing about titles, sorry.
Yes?
Sorry. They say Endgame in Age of Ultron.
Yes, they do.
They says that'll be the end game. Tony Stark says it. So that's pretty cool. Imagine if the Russos were like, yeah, we're calling the next Avengers movie Avengers Endgame, and they're like, oh, just like how Tony Stark says it in Age of Ultron.
I actually think that was 100% planned. Because they didn't reveal the Endgame title for a long time, and people were like, they didn't finalize it, and Kevin Feige was like, no, it was always called Endgame right from the first draft, that's why Doctor Strange says Endgame in Infinity War, And so I feel like it is, they were like, oh, this is a...
Yeah. I wonder if Endgame is going to be any more relevant to the plot other than it's just the last one for a while.
Either way, I mean, they talk about it being the Endgame, so it's like, yeah.
This is Operation Endgame.
But yeah, so some dumb IMDb trivia. This appeared on a few of the films in Phase 2. Each Marvel superhero movie has a main theme. Did you know that? Iron Man and its sequels, weaponry and technology, and The Incredible Hulk, mutation and nuclear power, Captain America, the first Avenger, and sequels, experimentation and espionage, Thor and its sequels, mythology and religion, Guardians of the Galaxy's extraterrestrial life and cosmic beings, Ant-Man is telepathy and control of animals, Doctor Strange, magic and witchcraft, all spoilers for the next episode, The Avengers, alien invasion, and Avengers Age of Ultron, artificial intelligence. Now, who the fuck thinks that that's good content writing that?
Movies are about concepts.
But the Avengers, the theme of Avengers is alien invasion. No, it's not.
That's not a theme.
That's fucking stupidest shit I've ever read. 26 out of 70 found that interesting.
Fuck!
Okay, are you ready to talk about the post-credit scenes and the Stan Lee cameos?
I forgot we were doing that, but here we go.
Okay, so post-credit scenes. So we're just going to kind of brief. What do we think of them? Iron Man 3 has Banner, is Tony talking to Bruce Banner in therapy.
Yep. Okay, if I'm going to start talking fast because I feel like we should wrap this up.
You think?
3 segments away from the end, I feel like we should wrap this up. If post-credit scenes didn't establish a rapport for being cliffhangers, this is a great post-credit scene.
Yeah.
If just having a funny joke was enough for people, this is a great post-credit scene.
Yeah. So the post-credit scene for this originally had Tony heading off to space and meeting the Guardians of the Galaxy, but they weren't 100% sure that Robert Downey Jr. would be returning, so that was scrapped.
Why would that... What? He's just gotten over going to space the first time.
Yeah.
I
I don't know, like, how do you get him in space? Because apparently in original drafts of Guardians of the Galaxy, he was in Guardians of the Galaxy in like a similar role to what he is in Homecoming, because in the comics at the time, Tony Stark was a member of the team. Also, this is either the first or the only, depending on how you look at it, post-credit scene in a Marvel movie to not tease a future film.
Right.
If you count, we'll get to it. So hold that in mind. Thor: The Dark World has two. The one is them delivering the Reality Stone to the Collector. It's our first look at Guardians of the Galaxy. I remember being really excited for that and like seeing what the world looked like. What do you think of that?
It's all right. It's pretty interesting how it doesn't really have any known characters in it.
Yeah.
It is cool to have that be the inception of talking about the Infinity Stones properly.
Yeah, that's the first name drop of Infinity Stones.
And that's maybe why I never picked up on Infinity Stones when I first watched these films, because I don't think I saw that post-credit scene.
Yeah, sure. Then Thor: The Dark World has another one, which has one of the frost giant monsters from Jotunheim running around London or wherever, and also has Thor arriving back at Earth and him and Jane make out.
I don't need it.
But fun fact about that scene is that Natalie Portman wasn't available to film it, so they chucked a wig on Chris Hemsworth's wife, so that's why that is the most passionate moment in both films between Jane and Thor. It
is weird to have your post-credit scene kind of rope back in the person trying to leave your franchise. What's the most, tasteful way we can write out Natalie Portman? Never mind, let's just have them be connected again at the end.
And also, these kind of started the trend of teasing the film after the next one.
Sure.
Because that's kind of, I think, you find what happens a lot these days. Captain America Winter Soldier, again, has two. First one is a tease for the twins in Age of Ultron. Again, I was excited to see those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's kind of like whatever.
Yeah. I think Joss Whedon directed it. Right. And James Gunn directed the one from Dark World. The other one from Winter Soldier is Bucky going to that exhibit and wanting to learn more about himself.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's cool. All right. Guardians of the Galaxy has two. Again, one is Baby Groot dancing, which is a very fun scene. And if you count that as like teasing that Groot's back and he's going to be Baby Groot in the sequel, then, that's teasing. Otherwise, these are the only two that don't tease future films.
Yeah.
What do you think of that one?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's funny. Is it even a post-credit sequence? Like during the credits?
Yeah, it's a like mid-credit sequence.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a fun one. And also the other one at the end of that is Howard the Duck appearing.
I love Howard the Duck. I'm so intrigued by Howard the Duck.
Yeah. Voiced by Seth Green.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
And this film came out 30 years to the day after the original Howard the Duck movie. Fun fact.
Nice.
Now, let's go. I'm just going to skip ahead and go to Ant-Man, where you've got one is teasing the Wasp with Evangeline Lilly looking at the suit. She says it's about damn time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and then the other one is just a clip from Civil War, essentially.
Yeah, I looked it up online because I didn't know if there was going to be another one, and people were saying that this is the worst post-credit scene because it's taken from a different movie.
Vehemently disagree.
Yeah.
The worst post-credit scene, and what I would actually rank as the worst post-credit scene, is in Avengers Age of Ultron, where Thanos grabs the gauntlet and says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." Now, let's break this down.
Okay.
Who the fuck is he talking to? What is he referring to? Do what himself? No one in the movie was trying to, do his bidding. Where is the Infinity Gauntlet at that time? He looks like shit in it. He's bright purple. He looks way worse than he did in Guardians of the Galaxy, and 100 times worse than he does by the time we get to Infinity War. When does this scene take place? Nothing about it makes sense, and the writers of Infinity War have said, they got asked, how does this fit into the timeline? They said, it's not our movie. We think it's fucking stupid as well.
So what is it's not relevant in the sense that he says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." Now, presumably he's referring to Ultron failing to take over the world, but Ultron wasn't like a missionary from Thanos.
Yeah, no one was a missionary from Thanos in that movie.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. It makes no sense.
Maybe Thanos is just referring to something else. Like it's like maybe like someone clogged the toilet and he's like, I know how to get rid of. Like everyone's trying to unclog the toilet, and Thanos is like, I know how to do this.
I better grab my toilet glove.
He grabs. It's just like what stone? Are there any stones in the gauntlet by that point?
No, not that time.
Oh, maybe he's just gonna punch the toilet. He's just gonna punch the shit down the toilet or something. And so that's what you see is him being like, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
So yeah, that's that. Like the only time that could have taken place is directly after the post-credit scene for the first Avengers. And then he's like, fine, I'll do it myself. And then waits like 6 or 7 years to actually do it.
Fine, I'll do it myself. And then cut to wide and there's some like lackey there and he's like, what are you going to do? And he's like, and just puts the gauntlet back in. Maybe later.
Yeah, because, the other, and who's the one that's kind of like Loki, in the Avengers, Loki is directly answering to, and then he answers to Thanos. They fail at their mission, so that would be the only time Thanos would be like, fine, I'll do it myself. But nothing in Age of Ultron has anything to do with Thanos. So it's a very stupid scene. So, now, Stan Lee cameos. What do we think of these? Now, Iron Man 3, he's a beauty pageant judge. It's a very quick scene.
It's hilarious.
Cool. Thor the Dark World, he's a mental patient in
it's hilarious.
The facility. And another fun thing about this one, so it's when Stellan Skarsgård, Eric Selvig, is fully in the institution trying to explain the 9 realms, and then Stanley's kind of like, can I have my shoe back? He's credited as himself in that film, which is great. Captain America the Winter Soldier, museum security guard.
Yeah, good.
Guardians of the Galaxy, Casanova alien.
Where is he in that film?
When we first meet Rocket and Groot, they're looking around, They're like, oh, look at this old creep.
That's a great one.
Yeah. Originally, he was going to be one of the collector's exhibit, in his collection, and he was going to flip off Groot,
right?
Because he's the only character that in the Guardians that he had a hand in creating,
right?
So fun little thing there. Age of Ultron, he's a drunk vet who gets kicked out of the Avengers party.
Yeah, and he says something funny, doesn't he? Or is that that's an Ant-Man. Ant-Man's my favorite one. Spoilers.
Yeah, so Ant-Man, it's during Luis, who's like Michael Pena's character, who does these like big, long-winded, talking really fast rants, and you see the characters like lip sync to what he's saying. And in this one, he's like, see that girl I'm with? She's crazy, stupid, fine. He's like, crazy, stupid, fine.
Yeah.
But it's like in Luis's
I like
voice.
that one the most.
Okay. We've made it. Here we are at the end. It's time to continue that franchise. Now, there's actually been a few attempts to continue the franchise, some more successful than others. There is another Avengers film that has been released. There's another one on the way. And there's actually an entire third phase of Marvel films, which we are going to be covering next week.
Fucking wasted our time.
So I'm going to go for my continue the franchises. Here it goes. So these are just some things that I would like to see. One is I would love to see what was obviously the original plan for Thor Ragnarok. I mean, I think it would probably be a worse film, and I would like to see what Alan Taylor would have done with Thor Ragnarok,
right?
Or if Kenneth Branagh had come back, because it's clearly they had a very different film planned.
Yeah.
Part of me, again, out of morbid curiosity, I don't necessarily think would have been better. I would like to see Joss Whedon's Infinity War or Endgame. He said he doesn't like Thanos as a character. He didn't want anything to do with him, and I think he was forced into including him in the post-credit scene. But yeah, that's another thing I'd like to see. 3, I would like to see a prequel to Age of Ultron. I looked this up because they do those prequel comics. The prequel comic for Age of Ultron is about Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. But I would like to see the one that's like, why is this the time they get together,
That was my original idea, was we need some kind of Tony Stark coming out of retirement prequel.
Yeah. And the other one I would like to see is bridging the gap between the post-credit scene of Age of Ultron and Infinity War. I would like to see I would like to see basically what we talked about before of Thanos being like, fine, I'll do it myself. And then he turns around, sees it's raining, and is like, oh, puts it back. Just give me that little fun scene. And even if you just paint Josh Brolin purple or like shitty keyframe it in Microsoft Paint, I just want to see a canon why that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's a gap filler. Marvel's
it's the only flaw in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Cool. Well, okay, I'm going to do something I've already done in a very recent episode, and that's take one of the movies and cancel it, strike it from continuity, and instead say it should have been a video game, which I did for the Girl on the Spider's Web from the Millennium series.
And you're going to do with Ant-Man.
Ant-Man is obviously the one to... So, I think, especially with Edgar Wright leaving, especially with it coming out after Age of Ultron, I think Ant-Man should have been to video games what Daredevil and Jessica Jones were to TV for Marvel, right?
Right, okay.
This should have started... Ant-Man should be the face of the Marvel Cinematic Universe video game branch.
You're doing video games this week.
Yeah.
I did video games last week.
Oh, very cool. So it seems obvious to me because one of the things I don't like about Ant-Man is that you can control ants. It just seems so you don't need that as well as shrinking. Like that justifies why it's called Ant-Man, is because he's small like an ant. I think the whole telekinetically controlling ants thing is very like they just get away with it. Like it's just explained enough for me to be okay with it. But in a video game, that's the mechanics of the game. Right, so you control the ants, and there's different types of ants that you use for different things.
You control the ants.
The ants. And of course, there's also the shrinking, the shrinking game mechanic feels part of it as well. Basically, everything about Ant-Man feels so disconnected from the rest of the series that, to me, it should have been the video game that came out tied to the MCU. And then, you've got Ant-Man and the Wasp. You experience that even further. I was thinking the first level of the Ant-Man game, you would be playing as Hank Pym in the war, and that's like your first taste of it. And then skip forward however many years, now you're playing as Scott, and you don't have the shrinking stuff for a bit, and then you finally get it. The climax of Ant-Man, which is actually probably my favorite part of the film, when they're fighting in his daughter's bedroom and there's a Thomas the Tank Engine thing.
I love that about the film.
That's a video game. That's a boss battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then you go into the quantum realm. Basically everything about the both Ant-Man films feels like I want to play the video game of it as opposed to watch a movie of it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I messaged you earlier and was like, while I was watching the films, I thought of a real good continue the franchise, and I've forgotten what it was. You just reminded me. I do want to say, I forgot to mention when we talked about Ant-Man, but the fact that, because one of my big complaints again about Age of Ultron was that the plot of like, I'm going to lift up this city and drop it on the world's going to explode, is so fucking stupid. Of course they're going to win, and I mean, I guess Infinity War kind of subverted that, but I mean, like, it's so boring. Like, just I'm going to destroy the world is a boring threat. Yeah. Whereas your daughter might get hurt is very real stakes. And that's so much more interesting. It's that go deeper thing. Like, you don't need to go bigger. Like, when the stakes are more personal, which is why Civil War is better than Age of Ultron. Yeah. Because the stakes are personal, not world ending. But yeah, I wish the sequel for Ant-Man was like a Godfather 2 type sequel, where it's a concurrent, like, two storylines, one with Scott Lang in the present day, one with a young Hank Pym fighting in the war. That's what it should have been. Yeah,
that's a good idea. But yeah, I guess I could see like the scene where he breaks into Pym's his mansion or his house, whatever it is. I went from too small to too big, and steals the suit.
When house is the word, like
yeah. He steals the suit, like, and Lewis is talking in his ear. That's a video game level, that's how you do the code breaker mini game. everything about it basically reminds me of what would actually be a standout video game, but because it's a movie, it's a rather subdued movie. And I think maybe if Edgar Wright hadn't pushed it so far that they had to make it probably for financial reasons, to get a return on all the money they'd spent on it, I think this is easily the best choice for a Marvel MCU video game.
One thing I also love about Ant-Man, when it cuts to he's like, I got a degree in mechanical engineering, I think I'm gonna be fine. That cuts to him working at Baskin Robbins, most realistic part of the MCU. But then so he's working at Baskin Robbins, an ice cream parlor, and then that guy comes in, just give me whatever's hot and fresh. And Paul Rudd's delivery of when he's like, hey, and he gets called away. He's like, hey, could you take care of this idiot for me? It's so good.
Yeah.
And that kid is, you might recognize him from 21 Jump Street.
You might recognize that kid as Albert Einstein.
Yeah, because that pissed me off when I watched it, is because I was like, where do I know him from? He's one of Channing Tatum's nerdy friends in 21 Jump Street.
Right. Turns out it was Albert Einstein. And you're like,
the nerdiest of all friends. All right, that is Phase 2 of the MCU. If you made it this far, why not go a little further? I hope you remember the name of that town. It was Zihuatanejo. There you'll find a black rock, which has no business being in Zihuatanejo. And underneath, you'll lift it up, there'll be a lunchbox, and inside it'll say, subscribe to Cult Pop Show. You can find us on YouTube, you can find us on SoundCloud, Instagram, Twitter, Cult Pop Show on everything, unless you want to email us, when you can find us at cultpopshowmedia@gmail.com.
It's like you've never done call to actions and now you do the best one. It's always me doing it. What a treat. What a treat that was. Man. I am hungry. Oh, baby. If you are a new listener,
what you thought. And this podcast, we're sorry it was very long, and it's actually even longer than we think right now, because we're going to record a little bit extra and chuck it in the middle, and you won't even notice.
You won't even fucking know what.
If you try and notice, I'll hit you.
I will give you $10,000 if there isn't something in the middle that we snuck in later. Oh my god! Oh my god! This is
gripping
my pop filter with rage because I'm so angry, but happy it's over. If you're a new listener, the episodes aren't usually this long. This is more of our big explosion into the world. Of
this is we've earned this. We've earned talking for.
Yeah, fuck you.
Fuck you. Dumbass.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week for what has to be a
6-hour episode.
6-hour podcast.
It's actually going to be 6 hours. Be prepared, because when we say it's going to be 6 hours, we're not exaggerating. It's probably going to be 6 hours.
Wow.
And you know what? You're going to fucking listen to it.
Little bitch.
All right, cool. Stop recording.
Yep, stopped. Oh my god, dude, I'm so hungry. I gotta go get some food.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to go? There's a new shawarma joint just down the road. Do you want to go check that out?
Let's do it.
So, I did want to say, it feels like we've been talking over a long time this episode, and we didn't used to talk this long, did we?
No, we used to talk for 25 minutes.
Yeah, and the sound quality was real fucking shit.
Yeah, and something I feel bad sometimes because I feel like, I don't know, something like Lethal Weapon or Ace Ventura or even Back to the Future deserved a longer conversation about from us with the standard that we've set now,
Yeah, we should do one of those again.
One of our original franchises. Redo a franchise. Do a franchise again. What's the best way to win? This is a post-credits teaser. Goodbye, everybody.